Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 87 of the Avocado Gamescast. That's 97 in French, or 87 for our Swiss and Belgian friends. I'm your host, Merve, and I've got three very special friends with me today to chat about some video games. First up, don't call him a Vorticon because he's the full-on Earthwolf. But not an Aardwolf. It's Wolfman Jew.
I feel like every time I come on here, I get more and more flummoxed, but please continue, and thank you.
Next, he's the secret 101st hero in Ayuden Chronicle. Say hello to PT.
It's not 108, huh? I actually had to look that up. It's hundreds. It's possibly over 100. They have to be, wow.
They have
Basically,
to get to like 12 times 9, something like that, probably.
12 times 9 there. They have to basically saw off the numbers off so they can and just say, okay, yep, this is not the exact same thing. We're just going to file the numbers off.
Exactly. Also joining us, he's alternating between raising his light level and scribbling medieval marginalia. It's the Kappa.
It's not light anymore; it's power level. But yeah,
It's power level. They changed it. No,
wonder-
they can't change it. Like
I
I had so many light level memes.
yeah. I hope you ran by the French and the Swiss with our Estonian fans. I don't want any drama. Those Europeans just look for a reason to fight. So
I don't know how to say 87 in Estonian, but I am going to look that up literally right now because I think our Estonian fan base
they deserve
deserves.
it. Nobody stands by us.
Oh
All
God,
8
it's
of
so
them.
Oh,
long.
wow, yeah.
It's Kaheka Sakumensetsu.
Yeah.
It's okay. Estonian's the same language family as Finnish, right? And Finnish is
Yeah.
famous for having just crazy long words. And there's like 80 different cases for every noun. It's a mess. I'm assuming Estonian's equally messy.
Hey, don't you? It's a wonderful language.
I admire anyone who could speak Estonian fluently. That language is super difficult. So, to our Estonian friends, you guys are super talented. We love you. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
First, there are the recent changes at Twitter and what they mean for the games industry. Actually, even before that, we're going to be discussing some news that has happened recently in the games industry. Pokémon Leaks, what's going on with Blizzard, what's going on with Volition. Then we're going to talk about Twitter. Twitter needs a little bit of breathing room. And then we're going to spend some time talking about what we've been playing lately. And finally, we're going to close out by taking a look at the Game Awards nominees, which were announced this Monday as of recording. We're recording on the 17th. They were announced on Monday the 14th. But before we get to all of that, we have something very, very, very important to discuss. We'd be remiss if we didn't discuss it. It's Project Sonic Watch 2022, baby! Woohoo!
Just imagine I edited in some rip roaring music. Right?
An air horn, really.
It's exciting.
Oh, I thought you were like editing out editing in the sound effect of, when you open up a pop can. Sorry, I live in Canada again. I can call it a pop can. So you'd open up a pop can, and then in those ads, you have some guy who opens it up, going refreshing.
I'm just gonna have the sound like the rings, like when you get hit in Sonic, all the rings fall out of you.
The drowning animation sound.
Oh yeah,
no.
that. When I was trying to say Project Sonic Watch 2022, baby, I tried to engage my falsetto, and then my voice just refused to go that high.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn.
Use it or lose it.
I know. I used to have such a wide range. I used to have an octave or more of falsetto. Now I have none of it. It sucks. Never get throat problems. They'll ruin you. So, Project Sonic Watch 2022, Sonic Frontiers just came out.
Sonic Fraud Tier? What?
Yeah, Sonic Frontiers, a new frontier in making fun of Sonic.
I thought for a second you said Sonic Frond here,
Yep.
like a palm frond.
No.
Oh. No, that's three entirely different things, which
Okay.
all have similar meaning. Well, no, they don't, but they all have a meaning of sorts.
Yeah, I don't know any words that start with F and pertain to sound, but I know what you're going for. Anyway, Sonic Frontiers tried to be Breath of the Wild, open world Sonic, with like I guess dungeons, which should be like the shrines in Breath of the Wild.
but without like the sense of contemplation or
Yeah.
Yeah,
um it yeah, it's very weird to think about like going to that game and just like deciding that Link can now move like 200% faster. That's a choice.
It's I've watched enough of streamers try to play it, and it's not for me. I really don't understand. Like, you got half a game there, half a good game, I think, and it's just kind of wild that we're still trying to figure out Sonic. It goes fast. There, I figured it out.
I think what kind of gets me about aping Breath of the Wild, and I'm saying this as someone who's actually not a huge fan of Breath of the Wild, but I'll say this: if you come for the king, you best not miss, right?
Yeah.
It's like it is one of the most beloved games of this generation. If you're gonna ape the surface level elements of it down to the aesthetic and the twinkling piano music,
Yeah.
you
Which
got to
doesn't-
be able to back that up.
Music that doesn't serve Sonic because Sonic is not a character who's capable of actually feeling any like sense of sadness or looking out and being like, wow, this whole area used to be really nice and now it's not so nice anymore, and I feel kind of bittersweet about enjoying it. Sonic isn't really capable of that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's not really a whole lot of nuance in a Sonic story.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't know why we're still trying to figure out Sonic. It's just like another year, another Sonic game. Like, I don't know. That's all I want to talk about.
You know
Sonic.
what? You know how you make a music for a Sonic game in 2022? You just take the Digimon the movie soundtrack
Yeah.
and you put it on top of Sonic, because that's the kind of music that goes with Sonic. Like
Oh, I was
All Star by Smash Mouth, Nowhere Near by Summer Camp, Spill by Show Off. That's what's got to be on there, and the Rockefeller Skank. You cannot forget the Rockefeller
What's
Skank.
weird about Sonic 2 though is like when I was watching people play it, it's like they're enjoying it, and then they have to go like do one of these like open world boss things. It's just so weird that this thing that everybody told them was going to happen happened. Like, everybody's like, what is the point of this open world stuff? Just give us Sonic. And then the thing that everybody said was going to happen happened, and it's like they still think they know better, you know? And that's why we'll be doing Sonic Watch 2025 and be like, yep, here we go again, another mediocre Sonic game, right? So
I have one actual more cogent point about Sonic Frontiers /
Yeah.
Project Sonic Watch, November 2022. So I haven't really I haven't watched any of the streams. I've only read one review. That was the Nintendo Life review. And I say this because specifically they have to mention that, like, partway through, oh, the reason why we gave this a 4 out of 10 is because of how bad it is on the Switch version.
Oh,
it's
wow.
not just for that. But the thing is, like, yeah, the Switch is a much more technically weak console. We all know this. We knew this, like, half a decade ago. Like, being, like, it's very clear that by this point there are ways to make it work and make the Switch work for you. And also, like, all of Sonic's best games, or all of Sonic's games sell best on Nintendo consoles.
that's why I'm surprised that you're saying it was bad on Switch, because I thought that would have been their primary console.
No, all of the footage they showed was, I believe, just from the PS5 version.
Okay.
Actively went about, like, trying to avoid showing stuff on the non-PS5 versions, but, like, yeah, no, the Switch version is apparently, like, is not, if not unplayable, at least incredibly compromised. And it's just really weird to me that, or maybe not weird, and not even really disappointing for Sega, but just kind of fascinating for me that, like, it's kind of working in this fashion when they don't really need to. Like, Sonic's been successful lately.
Yeah, it just feels like we're going in circles sometimes with them.
Which
Just
is
like the rings he carries.
Yeah.
I
Well,
will
Luke.
say, it like, who's itching to play this on PS5? Like,
Yeah.
who looks at Sonic and thinks, oh man, I want DualSense integration with that? I just don't get it. You're
I thought
absolutely
Switch
right,
would.
Wolf.
I honestly like shows how much I know about Sonic. I thought that would have been their prime console.
Yeah.
I thought it would have been developed for Switch and ported everywhere else.
Yeah,
Get it running good on that thing, and then
Yeah. Speaking of games on Nintendo Switch,
yeah.
Pokemon
with some graphical compromise
Scarlet-
issues.
And huge graphical issues. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are, as of this recording, out tomorrow.
Yes.
But reviews dropped today, the 17th. That being said, you could have found out all about the game even before the reviews because basically all of its content leaked months in advance, and I believe a build of the game was even floating around on the internet at some point.
I don't know if that's the thing. I don't think it was actually a build of the game. The game itself did get leaked 2 weeks prior, which is the standard of all Pokemon games, basically, and honestly most AAA games by this point. But what makes this sort of different from other Pokemon leaks is that essentially the entire roster of new Pokemon and even the roster of which Pokemon were returning from old games got leaked as little as 3 months ago and was heavily leaked for basically for I think almost the entire time from public announcement to release. Stuff about the story, stuff about the new characters, the incredibly weird new Pokemon, which I guess I can now talk about.
Oh yeah, because the game's out tomorrow.
Yeah.
So as long as it's not major spoilers, sure, let's talk about.
Yeah, I don't want to do plot spoilers, other than that apparently people have been very, very satisfied with at least some of the plot, surprisingly, for Pokemon.
That's so strange, because I don't think of Pokemon as these, very plot-heavy games with deep stories. The way I've always thought about it is you gotta defeat the gym leaders, you defeat some analog of Team Rocket, and I guess Giovanni or someone else behind the scenes. I don't know. I'm still stuck in Pokemon from 25 years ago, apparently.
Of course. Yeah. It all has that. Apparently, it's just that the way it's done, people found it much stronger than it has in previous generations, which is great because for all that Pokemon is not really a plot-heavy series, it does occasionally kind of make flirtations towards more interesting types of stories and certainly towards interesting characters that usually the problem is that those characters are all the ones on the side.
I feel like that sentence just describes about 80% of JRPGs.
Yeah, no, totally.
Do you still play as Ash, or is it a player character, or is it...
Oh, every generation has a different player character, or 2 player characters. There's a male and a female playable character. The character Ash is based on Red, is kind of evolved to sort of be the final boss in a bunch of other games. He essentially, after he beat the game, he kind of became this weird trickster who hides in the mountains and fights you with absurdly overpowered Pokemon from Gen 1.
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, and then Blue, the Gary character of whom Gary is an analog, but replaces Giovanni as the gym leader.
Oh, okay.
That's sort of they actually do bring back older protagonists and antagonists.
It's good to see that, I feel like there's always something that just riles the community, is the best I could describe it. But
Pokemon is a very loud and often acrimonious group.
This one I didn't see it too much, so I'm guessing it was okay. I mean, it seemed like mostly what I heard was people didn't like certain small changes, but it wasn't this is an affront to my childhood, like I saw with the last one.
The main issue, essentially, is just the fact that the game does have generally very serious performance issues at times, and most often during the parts that are the most exciting new part, which is that this is a fully open-world game with no actual, gating. You can avoid every trainer, you can do all of it in the order, pretty much almost everything in the exact order you want, so you could potentially go actively out of your way to find the hardest gym first and then just coast to victory off of that.
Through the rest of the game, yeah.
No, this is going to be an amazing game for speedrunning. I'm pretty confident.
Cool. I wonder maybe they did that on purpose.
I think So other than that, like, I think there's been some consternation over certain Pokemon designs.
That's
Apparently,
mostly what I'd heard. Yeah.
a lot of fans, I think, would prefer that Pokemon do more like animalistic Pokemon and less human-y Pokemon, which I'm kind of ambivalent about.
I feel like humany monsters is more like Digimon's bailiwick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The champions, you mean?
Yeah,
The Digimons are the champions. Okay.
they are.
Um, for whatever it's worth, the starters in this one is it's a cat that turns into a magician, a crocodile that turns into like a giant undead crocodile, and a duck that turns into a kickboxing dancer.
I like
Yo,
the crazy
the
stuff
first,
myself.
like, the basic form of that duck looks like he's a trust fund kid.
Yeah, he looks like one of the ducks from DuckTales.
Yeah, he looks like one of the ducks from DuckTales if that duck just, like, fully embraced their privilege.
Yeah.
It was like, yes, I want to be Mini Scrooge, but with, like, from the modern perspective. It's not like a monocle, but they still got the Argyle sweater vest and the collared shirt, and they talk about the poors. That's what Quaxley's got going on.
Is he a duck fuck boy? Is he a duck boy?
I don't think so. I think people... Oh, damn it. I didn't realize what you were doing there.
Oh.
What is it? I think the one I'm gonna go with is the cat, but I think the crocodile has the best design. When it evolves, it gets like a hat that kind of looks like a sombrero, and then when it evolves again, you realize that that's because it's actually a nest with an egg in it, and that when it evolves, the top of its head is like a flaming bird.
So it's like two monsters in one, kind of
No,
symbiotically?
It's more like there's an Egyptian god that's like a crocodile that has a bird on it, like a heron on its head. It's like that.
Oh,
Like it's a
okay.
giant.
So it's like Banjo-Kazooie.
Sure.
I was
Like,
going to
it's
say
not
it's like
just more
ukulele,
fun.
but you would like probably slap me through my computer screen if I made that
Look,
comparison.
you're on fucking like thin ice, brother.
All right. So that is Pokemon. Two other pieces of news that happened recently.
Like
One
today,
concerns
for us. Yeah.
Blizzard. Activision Blizzard. Well, not Activision Blizzard. I guess just Blizzard.
Just Blizzard.
Just Blizzard.
So far, and weirdly, it doesn't affect their mobile game.
It
I
does
guess
not
they
affect Diablo Immortal. That I read,
Yes.
yeah. So Blizzard is effectively pulling out entirely, barring its mobile division, from China. I should clarify what this means. In order for foreign game companies to operate in China, they need to effectively partner with the domestic Chinese company. That's kind of how legally registering a company or registering a commercial endeavor works in China. And the company they'd partner with there is NetEase. The relationship between NetEase and Blizzard effectively collapsed this year, and according to one NetEase employee, this is the work of a quote-unquote jerk.
Yeah, a jerk.
Whom that jerk is, we don't know.
Yeah.
But there is a jerk in this story.
The people I feel most for this I'll get into this later, but as an avid MMO player, this is like a nightmare. It's like something that every MMO player has like in the back of their mind. One day they're going to shut the server off, and one day this is all going to be gone. You know, but like to have it pulled out from under you like this for all the World of Warcraft players, and that game, there's people there that have probably like grown up and had kids and like are like full on 40-year-olds like me who have played that game together the entire time. I can only imagine how like totally devastating that is for those players. You know, it's like it's one thing to be like any kind of like gaming group, but I'm telling you, like MMO clans that have gamed together for years and years and years, it's a different feel. So I feel awful for them. I mean, Blizzard, bottom line, whatever. I don't know how their business is in China. I'm sure it's pretty good, but I mean, it's got to be like devastating just for those players to be like, oh hey, guess what, we're done, bye, servers are going off, see you later. and I mean, I'm sure they want to know who that jerk is more than anyone. So, I feel for them. I mean, and for Blizzard, they just launched Overwatch 2, and I think we've kind of seen this here and there with China. I think a lot of countries, or not, a lot of companies are getting less and less willing to do the stuff that China requires them to do to play ball.
Yeah.
I mean, I know like Marvel's basically said we're not going to edit our movies anymore, and I think the last 3 Marvel movies maybe didn't have a Chinese premiere. Am I right?
Yeah, I'd have to look that up, but
It's been
I
a
know
couple
they've.
now.
I mean, after the major controversy with the first Doctor Strange film,
Mhm.
where they had to rewrite a character's Tibetan backstory, they've, I think, sensing that backlash and seeing that the Chinese market is actually not that huge a percentage. I mean, it is
Yeah.
pretty substantial, and actually more of a percentage of their revenue than Blizzard gets from China. Blizzard
Yeah.
actually gets surprisingly little of the revenue from China, so this is not a huge financial hit. But
That
it becomes a
is
matter
interesting
of
to me.
like that. I guess the trade off here is if they thought that market was going to grow, then they'd be willing to stick
Yeah.
around. But with the Chinese government increasingly kind of cracking down on the games industry, seeing it perhaps either as a means of like foreign pop cultural influence or the infiltration of foreign values through art.
Or
There's
it's-
reported. Sorry, let me just finish that
Oh,
thought.
sorry.
Apparently, a lot of it is opposition to things like anime styled stuff, which they see a lot as like foreign Japanese influence on Chinese mainland culture. They see a lot of things like
K-pop.
a lot of hip hop and pop influences. They see things that are like they see things like gender bending and things like that in media, and androgyny that they see as foreign influence, despite the fact that there's a long domestic history of that. So,
Yeah.
let's not attribute. Let's not paint China as this monolithic
Yeah.
culture, like monolithic necessarily wholly heteropatriarchal culture. But there is a perception, at least within the government, that this kind of stuff all comes from the outside. And so you see this crackdown kind of across the board. And now, as you so rightly point out, as it's becoming increasingly hard to keep up with these demands, is it even worth it if you have to keep paying these costs? And I guess a lot of companies are finding out no. Now, is this necessarily what happened in the case of Blizzard and Eddies? There might have been some other business relationship that deteriorated behind the scenes. But one would have to think that there's more of an incentive to resolve whatever issues there would be, were it not so difficult to keep operating there. Sorry, Wolfman, you were saying something.
I was also just going to say, yeah, that you're completely on about kind of the way that the current Chinese government is working, where that idea of it being kind of a monolith, it's sort of something the government itself is kind of promoting. It's not just a kind of stereotype that does exist. In our side of the world. I was also going to mention that like part of the reason why a lot of the government was kind of open to these kinds of interactions to begin with for the past few years is because my understanding is that the Chinese Communist Party kind of views a lot of these industries as something that they want to have kind of their wholly owned and their wholly developed industries and not just rely on like foreign products. So a lot of like trying to work with other movies or trying to work with other established game companies was sort of like a way to help a lot of their native industries kind of prop up.
Yeah.
And at which point they could then like be as strict as they wanted with what actually comes in and not really care.
And I mean, that has worked to the extent that they've now developed a pretty substantial domestic games industry, but it's proving harder to regulate than they might have thought. Like, for instance, Genshin Impact is consistently trying, like, it's become this massive global phenomenon, and it's become almost very difficult to rein it in and push it in a direction that they wanted it to go. Not that like this thing is any sinister in any cultural sense. It's just that at a certain point, if you say object to certain character designs or storylines, and that thing is already out in the world, it becomes a lot harder to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah,
It's the way that the U.S. won the Cold War with blue jeans and McDonald's, right? It's always that cultural push, I mean, you've made enemies of people who are, Overwatch players now forever in the Chinese government, and it's just those little things stack up, and eventually you start to see pushback to some of that. So it's just a really weird scenario. I feel like 5-6 years ago, a lot of these companies, Blizzard especially, if you look at some of the stuff they had to do to make Pandarans a thing in WoW, it would blow your mind. They had to treat them with all these respects. They can't die. They had to remove skulls from the game because of it's just there's just so much work that they had to do on some of that stuff to really make it a product in China. And I just wonder at some point when they're just saying, look, if this isn't worth it, and this is the type of headache we're not getting the money we want, then we're not going to make the concessions, and then we're just not going to sell our products there. And I can really see that being something that maybe the future leads, to a lot less of these companies willing to be doing some of the changes.
Yeah. And also, of course, the inverse is also true. A lot of Chinese games are very strong in the Chinese market. Some of them are strong, in global markets, but they kind of also I think my suspicion is you're probably going to see with a lot of Chinese games is a lot of them struggling over time to work outside the Chinese market, or alternatively, how much, I don't know.
I played Crossfire. Trust me, we're not missing anything. That game was a disaster.
Yeah.
It really depends. There are a lot of great games from mainland China that come out every year. One of my favorite games from this year was Mutation M, which is this 2D action RPG that was really, really well made. And they are developing more and more of an indie scene, and it is becoming more and more international, but at the same time, the stronger things lock down, the harder it is for people to start marketing their games outside of the country, forming business partnerships outside of the country.
Yeah.
In the end, they might be stifling their own development scene and relegating it to whatever domestic audience is there, which, let's be real, is huge.
Right.
But is it enough to say, it might be enough of an audience for, say, a smaller title, but if you want that huge AAA blockbuster, does it have enough of an audience domestically in China? Maybe not, and that's going to be a problem for developing their games industry going forward.
There's always that weird, we don't want kids to play this game out of nowhere, And if you're developing a game that's internal only, you've got to probably worry if for some reason the government cracks down on your game or even the genre of game you made. That could be really, that was a chilling effect type thing for a lot of those developers who are like, man, if this is just a China only game, I'm going to have to be on point with making sure this follows every single rule it can,
And the rules do change pretty swiftly and without a lot of warning. Okay, there was another piece of news in the games industry this week that will probably come as a disappointment to many of us. And it's that Volition, which is wholly owned by the Swedish gaming conglomerate Embracer Group, was moved under Gearbox Software, which is also owned by the Swedish entertainment conglomerate Embracer Group. So effectively, Volition, instead of being its own kind of independent thing under Embracer, is now under Gearbox.
This is a weird one.
Let me rephrase that. It was moved, I believe, Deep Silver, which was under Coke, under Embracer, but
Media,
now it's moved under.
GmbH or whatever. Yeah.
Where's the flow chart? We need a flow chart.
Yeah, that organizational hierarchy at Embracer is complicated, but yeah, Volition, I believe, is under Deep Silver.
Anytime you're reporting
Embracer,
in some way to Randy Pitchford, a friend of the show, Randy Pitchford.
Yes, friend of the show. Yes.
Oh yeah, this is the Pitchford story.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I forgot all about the pitch.
I mean, where I keep going on this one is it's so hard for me to believe that Saints Row had this precipitous fall, right? From like, I don't know if 4 was the height of the series, but it had to be pretty close, right? In terms of sales,
people love that game.
Critical,
Cultural penetration.
Yeah, I mean, it was everywhere. And it's like, finally. And I think somebody had a good point in one of the articles I read that said maybe this game flopped because the game it's making fun of or lampooning or whatever doesn't really exist anymore, because we haven't had a GTA 5 or, a GTA 6, and GTA just isn't fresh in people's minds, while Saints Row actually is. So it's kind of having to stand on its own.
Saints Row has this weird... Yeah, that's something I actually hadn't thought about. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just kind of excited because you really hit on something I hadn't thought of, which is that, like, Saints Row, for basically as long as it's really existed, I guess, has kind of always posited itself as in opposition to, or a parody of, or response to something else. Like, It was the GTA clone, and then it was the GTA clone when GTA got more serious, and don't you like when GTA is more funny? So we're like that too. We're GTA, but really random and wacky, and then to just, like, we're just going to do, like, a crazy sandbox game where we're just going to use superpowers and everything. And
the thing I was thinking about, maybe a close parallel, and I might be wrong here, was something like South Park, right? Where it's a lot easier for South Park to be a smart-ass show about kids when it's counter everything else that's on TV, right? It's the counter Simpsons, it's the counter whatever, but then when it has to go stand on its own, it's a lot harder, right? You start getting some of these things, you're like, wait a minute.
As it turns out,
South Park is also a really good point of comparison, because each episode of South Park is developed with a really short production cycle, so they can respond to things from like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Whereas a video game takes years and years to make, and you can at best respond to stuff that happened 6-7 years ago. And I'm thinking if Saints Row wanted to be relevant as a parody or a lampooning, as you pointed out, it would have to be like, I don't know, a parody of a Sony Prestige open world game.
Yeah, like
maybe that would be relevant, like parodying Days Gone or
Breath of the
God of
Wild
War, what have you.
Elden Ring, yeah.
Yeah.
Get crazy with it.
It's
I was gonna say, with that launch window, I'm surprised they didn't make fun of Souls games.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It would have been perfect, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't hate the Saints. I mean, this one, I hate to even bring it up. I feel like there was a little bit of that whole get woke, go broke stuff, but I don't really think that's what people who played the game were really saying. This is what the game's doing wrong. I don't think it had anything to do with that. I think it was just everything felt sloppy, and I think the biggest cut down was that all the main characters wouldn't have felt right in any other Saints Row game. They just totally lost the tone of the game. Yeah. And when that happens, like, you're going to disconnect with everyone, because if I'm playing it for goofy fun. That if I picked up a Saints Row right now, what would I expect? Goofy fun, surfing on cars, doing all kinds of, and then they said, when I was reading the interviews from the CEO or whatever, he's like, we want this one to be more serious and grounded. I'm like, why? Where does that come from?
The thing is, I think if you want to continue Saints Row, you kind of eventually have to ground it, just because, like, the superpower...
Where do you go from here?
Yeah, like, once you have, like, Saints Row 4 putting you in the Matrix and giving you superpowers and, like, ice breath, and you team up with Santa Claus, like, you needed to go down. Like,
yeah, you literally go to hell.
Yeah, like, you need... No, yeah, but what you literally... Like, you have to, like, actually come down from that, and, like... And also, like, you can do a lot of humor with just, like, a relatively grounded premise. I think the problem is it seemed like it was a combination of, like, the fact that it's trying to, like, like parody something that doesn't really exist, and also like parody stuff that it doesn't really exist anymore in other ways too, and also just the fact that apparently the gameplay was so turgid and boring
Yeah,
that
I
like
think that was the death knell right there. I mean,
yeah.
it's a weird scenario. I think I've always heard. I don't know if I've always heard this, but this is like an indie dev thing. Like you're always one failure away from just not existing
Yeah.
in gaming, you know. And I would never have guessed that that would happen to Volition, who still does exist. Don't get me wrong; they're not, completely done. But I mean, basically the news was like, yeah, this was a flop. Didn't sell what we wanted to. Okay, now they're being, basically melded into the stew
Into the
of
Pitchfork minds.
yeah,
Yeah.
Embracer Group, Pitchfork crew.
The
Speaking of things that might not exist soon,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Go ahead.
At the
What
time
the-
of this podcast, we better say that we're recording this right now, and it does exist. So.
it still exists. Might not exist soon. So literally, as we were recording, I just pulled up cbcnews.ca, and one of the top headlines is Twitter closes offices until Monday as employees quit in droves.
Yeah, I believe the idea is that the current theory is that they have to keep people from disgruntled employees from theoretically putting like viruses or hacks or information thievery into what's already a heavily compromised system. But also, this is from the guy who banned work at home, so
I don't. I mean, I have so many thoughts about this, right? I mean, I think we all do. But I mean, trying to keep it just from the gaming perspective,
yeah.
Seeing this happen at the same time as another thing that happened, which was the FTX crash, right?
Yeah.
It's so weird, this world of like tech bros, crypto bros, and how they all kind of swarm around gaming.
Yeah, gamification.
Yeah, and like they hold gaming up to this weird standard and this weird ideal and stuff like that. And Twitter is always going to be, I don't say it's always going to be, might not even exist, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be a place where if you carefully curate it, you carefully follow people, you find the people that you like, there's a point to it, right?
Yeah.
But I think what everybody else's reaction to is Twitter is the idea that everybody who's on Twitter thinks everybody else in the world is always online, hyper online. Twitter is all that they know. But, gaming wise, I think that we're just going to be stuck for a while with it being, with Twitter being just as bad for gaming as it is every other brand, where everything we read is going to have to be who said this, when did they say this, who's impersonating who. And it just really sucks.
Yeah, I've been enjoying some of the impersonations, if mostly just the ones at the expense of Twitter CEO Elon Musk. But like, it's not really fun to be deceived. Like,
yeah,
there are times where people like, on the avocado politics thread, which I frequent a lot, where like someone will kind of post like a parody account or something, and it's like, oh, obviously it's a parody. You should have just seen that like one or two of the letters were differently spelled. And it's like, it's not really fun. Like,
yeah, it's like, how the April Fool's Days had devolved to like, oh, you thought that was real, you stupid idiot.
Yeah, yeah,
it's
they're
not,
like,
it's not really a fool.
Yeah, it reminds me. Yeah, to kind of go back to the politics thread, it does remind me of all of those parody accounts for a certain former
yeah,
person of the state.
Donald Trump or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like, oh, I just it's like a half dozen different accounts where it's just, if I say something funny in his string of consciousness, phrasing, it'll be funny. It's like, no, actually, I don't think you're funny, and you're actively making me more sad. So please stop.
Yeah, it just makes me think of him, and that makes me feel bad. Yeah, and it sucks that we had to rely on Twitter for so long for news. I mean, like, we bemoan gaming journalism here and there, right? But like, it was such a good source. Like, oh, I found this on Twitter. Guess what? We're getting DLC for whatever. And it seemed like gaming companies like it because they could get it in your face right away, and didn't have to go through layers of PR and this and that. But
also, like, it, for all that, this is a double-edged sword because it also, like, promoted, like, weird right-wing reactionary, like, hateful vitriol and harassment, but it also did allow a space for, like, serious discussions of like issues that the mainstream press really was not covering then, and to this day is still limited in how it covers gaming news. Like, I remember
a lot of the allegations of misconduct or mistreatment in the industry, especially the ones at gaming news outlets themselves, which broke, I guess, now a couple of years ago. That all broke on Twitter.
Yeah. It didn't break on Facebook. Like,
I was
Twitter,
gonna say, was EA Spouse on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, yeah. It's been a while.
I think that was like a Tumblr or something weird.
A Tumblr.
Okay.
Yeah,
something like that.
We'll look it up.
Either way, like,
I'd have been a posteress.
Twitter was kind of unparalleled at its ability, and I feel sad calling it was, but it was kind of unparalleled at its ability to provide speed and accessible information when it came to, like, information, especially stuff you didn't have to read, because a person reading in, writing, and who only spoke a language you never spoke could still put up a like footage of an abuse happening at a company, or a goofy glitch, or even something really cool that didn't actually require volume or spoken language, and you could get it. Like, that's really powerful. It was easy.
Yeah.
And it really.
It's. I think the ideal case for Twitter, right, has always been, look at the Arab Spring. You know what I mean? Or like an event like that. Like, this thing can be the mouthpiece of the masses, and just to kind of like that's its best case scenario. Don't get me wrong. That's not most of Twitter, right?
Yeah. No.
But to see it, instead of being moved towards a place like that, instead, hey, this is where my friends are going to make poop and fart jokes, and if we don't find you funny, you're not going to be allowed in our cool clubhouse anymore. I mean, it sucks. There's no way around it.
Having said that, I will say that it has been generally very heartening to see at near the possible 11th hour of its existence, that Twitter has managed to actually do that, in that the entire world has basically come together to mock and insult the world's richest man.
Yeah.
There is something genuinely kind of something I can both appreciate on a Schadenfreude level and just a sincere level.
And we've all, well, I don't know about all of us, but we've been around to see the collapse of stuff that no one thought would ever collapse, right? MySpace. If you would have told me at the height of MySpace, hey, no one's gonna use this thing in a couple of years, right? I'm like, you're out of your mind. Maybe something better does come along,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying that one of these new programs can't, but I'm just hoping that it has less of a technological, let's push the limits and sell this and sell that. And maybe more like a philosophical idea behind it. Like, hey, what is this thing for? We have enough idiots shouting in the marketplace. Do we really need to be another place that just does that? Or is there a way that we can kind of put some effort into curating this or moderating this or doing something that's, broadly good?
Yeah, I would really love to just be for someone to try to make the next few social media scenes where they're just like, yeah, we know we're not going to make a lot of money, and that's okay. And trying to build that into the company culture, but I don't really know how plausible that actually is.
I mean, that's Tumblr, and Tumblr has just been losing money for years straight.
I'm not convinced that any of these companies ever make money, personally. I mean, did Twitter ever turn a profit before?
Oh, I doubt it.
I believe no.
What I wanted to say real quick was, one of the things I'm going to miss, to kind of go back to the whole gaming, foster community stuff that's on Twitter, is I'm going to miss a lot of I think one of Twitter's greatest strengths, which is a very strange thing to say until I add context, is the bots. Mm-hmm. In the automated content bots.
Yeah.
In a sense where, I you might notice I post it every so often on the threads, the avocado, the day or night threads, where just complete nonsense, like over and over again, or a good faces bot, or stuff like that, where it's like I got a good laugh out of that. There, it's funny. It's like someone like put forward the time to make me giggle a couple times there every so often, which is in what you had said earlier about curating. Yeah, until I eventually deleted my Twitter because I just like, what, I'm done. I don't really care anymore. I was curating it pretty heavily towards weirdo bot stuff, curating towards, I mean, if you really want if you want something that's similar on video games for how absolutely toxic it can be on Twitter, you just got to look at pro wrestling.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Which is unfortunately one that I follow as well. But no, it's I feel that any group, any company that's going to bake the next Twitter or make the next social media phenomenon, I think they should have like a backbone of sorts of not just this not just accounts that are out there to debate. Like I don't think social media should be the embrace debate of social media. ESPN, no. Stephen A. Smith, yapping all day. No, I think it should be. I think it should just be a lot more comfortable, a lot more smooth there. And I feel, I mean, again, is the majority of what I've liked about Twitter in the past year or two are just folks just dumping random content. I mean, or like I posted just yesterday there's an account called WCW Deep Cuts for the former wrestling company, and just this person just releases these video clips of these weird moments, and I got a solid laugh and I learned something. It's like, oh, that made me happy, or just that, or just little bits and bytes and just stuff that kind of push it along the day. Like I'd rather there be an infrastructure of just small little items, providing information, no matter if it's important information or haha, that person fell on his face and it looked like it hurt. I mean, it's stuff like that. Like I feel that would be more I feel like that would be more sustainable than let's just turn this into a political hellhole like Twitter is or was.
Yeah. And also, like, the thing is that also, if Twitter was only that, then like 90 to 99% of the people on Twitter wouldn't be on it. Like, that was the whole thing, was that
Sure.
They weren't making a debate. They didn't have a platform that was primarily seen as the place for the debate me guy. It's just that, like,
It just turned into it around them, kind of.
yeah, and then unfortunately one of them decided to buy the company.
Yeah.
And then
I do feel like those guys are kind of everywhere, though.
they are.
If they're not on Twitter, they're going to be on Reddit or
Yeah.
Yeah,
elsewhere.
and that's why you
Not
need
on the
to broom
avocado.
and sweep them away.
Get them right out. Go right out
Sweep
of that.
away.
Oh,
I do want to just mention one thing, which we mentioned, like people trying to gamify Twitter, Musk and his like disreputable cohorts trying to gamify like other places. He did at one point early on attempted to suggest the idea that you should be able to do your banking on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And which is A, not safe at all,
yeah.
and B, like, that's like the worst thing, right? Like, why do you want to go on Twitter? You want to post fun things or share, or in my case, share screenshots of Pokemon you took pictures of in new Pokemon Snap. It's not really to become the centerpiece of my online identity or my online work.
Well,
And
I
that
think
was
that's
just-
the thing. Is a lot of these things, like crypto, does this exact same thing,
Exact-
right?
yeah.
You have to make a use case for this thing that everybody's like, this isn't useful. This is just fun. No, I have
Yeah.
to make a use case for this. And I think that's what he's really struggling for right now, is because nobody really needs it, right?
Yeah,
We like it. It's made a lot of things
Or-
better, but
or maybe there are things that do need it, but all of those things are like liberal to leftist political movements he hates.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but yeah, like it's this weird thing of like it, and I mean, I guess you can also argue that like a lot of the entire like global industry is kind of like it. Like we're not just allowed to like a movie; we're kind of expected to learn about lore and get sequels. Now that's why everything now has a multiverse.
Yeah, or the
It's
greatest thing ever,
yeah,
or the worst thing ever.
it does feel like there's this weird thing of it's like it's not just that our attention is requested, it's that it is obsessed over and and aggressively demanded, and that's just deeply exhausting.
Yeah, exhausting was the word I was going to say immediately.
Yeah, I will say that in addition to political movements, to bring this back to gaming,
Sure. Yeah.
one group of people that relied heavily on Twitter for networking, for publicity, etc., were indie devs.
Yeah.
And that was an extremely important marketing tool for them. And now that's gone. They're not all going to flock to LinkedIn.
That's
The
insane.
LinkedIn algorithm is not going to prioritize them meeting up with each other in that particular way. And so
Facebook isn't really a great option. Tumblr is maybe slightly better in theory, but it doesn't have the audience. TikTok.
exactly,
Time to strike.
and then
Come
it
on,
becomes
Discus.
hard for them.
Yeah.
Discus has its own problems.
It's
Oh.
like barely functioning right
Pronounced discuss.
Yeah, I don't care. It's disquous.
Disquist.
I believe in you guys.
Discuss.
Come on, Michael, you can do it. Be the new Twitter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're all on the same page. And it's going to be one of those things that probably gets worse before it gets better. But I think, sometimes something needs a visionary, or somebody like that to get it above where it is. And I don't. It's obviously not going to be this dude. I think he's just going to gut the place and sell it, and maybe something better comes along from the ashes, or somebody comes along and fixes it. But it's just difficult to watch from something that I didn't honestly love it, but it is difficult to something that you at least thought, hey, eventually this thing's going to get better and it's going to serve some purposes, and to just crapping its pants and running away or something.
Yeah. Speaking of crapping our pants and running away, I actually don't have a segue for that.
Leave it there. I gotta go.
Speaking of crapping our pants and running away, the podcast is now over.
It's like, what were you playing? Why is it a piece of crap?
I gotta go.
No, I've actually been playing something pretty good.
Right.
Speaking of the
let's hear it.
opposite of crapping my pants, I've been playing a game called The Entropy Center, which is a first-person puzzler that's very much in the vein of Portal. It's basically just Portal in the way it's set up. You have to place cubes on switches, and the cubes flip the switches to move various components around, and that allows you to get from point A to point B. It's Portal, right?
And that's
But
okay.
instead of creating portals, this is like my favorite genre, right? Is Portal clones. We used to call first-person shooters Doom clones.
Yeah.
I call them first-person puzzlers now, or spatial puzzlers, something like that. But the main mechanic here, instead of creating portals, is to rewind time on specific objects. So you aim your little gun, which is not a portal gun, it's a time rewinding gun.
Yeah.
And that allows you to take an object and rewind it through time, or freeze it in time somewhere. And then you can either stop the rewind, in which case the current momentum applied to the object gets reapplied to it, or you can remove its time properties entirely, in which case it'll just drop to the ground. Basically, anything you move around can be rewound through time. So the whole way you solve these puzzles is to essentially plan out your solution backwards. You backwards induct, and then you execute it forwards.
This sounds wild, man.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Didn't they try? Wasn't there a game that was? It might have even been by the Portal team that tried this.
Are you thinking of Quantum Conundrum? Which I
Yes. Yeah, that's
Quantum Conundrum had a
what I'm thinking.
completely different mechanic. That was
Okay.
also by Kim Swift. The mechanic in Quantum Conundrum was to change the physical properties of the environment. So you would make everything heavy or make everything fluffy and light.
Oh, okay.
I think you could also essentially slow down time. So like 3 or 4 different ways in which you could change the physical environment around you. And then you would use that to, I was going to say solve puzzles, but bulk of that game is really a wacky first-person platformer. It's basically first-person Guacamelee at a certain point. That game is nuts.
It was weird because as much as everyone loved Portal, it seems like everyone didn't like Quantum Conundrum. So I don't know exactly.
Quantum Conundrum, you're absolutely right. Quantum Conundrum would have been a great game if it were in third person, but it just does not work as a first-person platformer because platforming in first person is really hard. And if you're not as good at it as, say, Mirror's Edge or Titanfall 2, don't even try, man.
Also, it's just fundamentally the state of where the gaming industry was in 2011, I want to say, is when Quantum Conundrum came out, or was it 2012?
It'd be 12 or 13, because 2011 was Portal 2.
Yeah. It was that basically, fundamentally, it was always going to be hard for a Portal clone to survive because of the way Portal penetrated the culture and the way that it was not just that it was a very clever game about solving puzzles, it was also just, became the gaming equivalent of fucking Monty Python and the Holy Grail in terms of, the things nerds are the most...
The cake is a lie. Yeah, people were, the cake is a lie shirts. It was, it was everywhere. For a weirdo indie puzzle game, that was gigantic.
So a couple other things I wanted to mention about this game. It does also have a few action sequences, which are, I guess, effectively combat arenas. But you don't have a gun. Well, you do have a gun. The gun just doesn't fire bullets. What happens is evil robots will fire essentially energy orbs at you, and you rewind the energy orbs back at the bots, and that blows them up.
That's fun.
You also do things like they'll blow up parts of the environment, and then you can rewind them to use as cover. So they do some clever stuff with that, although it's not the most engaging part of the game. I should also mention the narrative. It's about the titular Entropy Center, which is an organization that rewinds Earth every time an apocalyptic event happens. And
kind of cool.
The way the story details this is, at first it was mostly environmental disasters, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, etc. But as history progressed, more and more of these became man-made disasters. And so there's a little bit of philosophical conflict there. You're set in a part of time where something's gone horribly awry on their space station, moon station, wherever this thing is located, and you have to figure out what happened and why everyone seems to be dead or missing. Your only companion is your gun. In fact, your gun is a character, just like how you're accompanied by, say, GLaDOS or Wheatley in Portal.
Yeah.
Talking guns are all the rage right now.
Yeah, it's a talking gun game, just like the upcoming High on Life. Yeah. I think I referred to this in the show notes as a Manic Pixie Dream Gun, because that's effectively the character's personality. She's a helpful AI assistant who's excessively chipper and very quirky and takes a lot of things extremely literally. It doesn't work so well. It's extremely irritating. I want to punch the stupid gun.
I was going to say, that's something you got to thread the needle on. Otherwise, I imagine I could probably think of several characters from all sorts of games where it's like, oh, this one's supposed to be, interesting, or actually I do have one, but but for folks were just like, oh, we're supposed to be charming or interesting. And it's like, no, actually, I hate you and I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, especially when it's something you interact with so frequently as like a gun. You know what I mean? That can be. It's better nail it.
My initial thoughts of positive versions of this was Cortana and Midna, and you interact with them a lot, but you don't interact with them every time you shoot your gun or swing your sword.
I will say the nice thing about the gun, whose name is eluding me at the moment, is that she doesn't talk while you're solving puzzles. So she doesn't give away the answer or do anything stupid like that. But basically there's dialogue between every puzzle, and every time it's irritating. So mercifully, it's limited, but it is still there.
I'm-
So yeah, I've been having fun with it.
Meet Astra, the Entropy Center's most advanced technical marvel.
Astra, that's her name.
Astra, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm reading the Steam page right now because I wanted to see some footage.
It looks basically like Portal.
Yeah,
as I'm
yeah,
sure you're seeing right now.
That it does, yes.
Down to the color scheme for rewinding forward and backward in time being blue and orange.
Also, I tried to look it up and I spelled center well the incorrect way in your words, but the correct way in mine. And it is.
Yeah, I believe this game was developed in the UK, I want to say. I'm not entirely certain. I should look that up. So they spell center correctly as opposed to however you weirdos spell it south of the border.
Yeah, well, meanwhile, you spell aluminum wrong. Or wait, is
No.
that Canadian thing or just
Canadian
British?
aluminum spelling is the same as American.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, never mind. Let's instead brag on the British.
No,
Aluminium.
Armor and
No,
armor.
I make fun of my parents for it because they're from India, so they spell it the British way. So they go aluminium. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
That was literally invented because the guy who changed it thought that aluminum wasn't classy enough.
What?
Yeah, no, really.
Aluminium.
It was like,
That's what my
Toss an
parents
I
call
in there.
aluminum. They say aluminium foil. They also say schedule.
Yeah, if you're ever bored, look at why they say lieutenant instead of lieutenant. It's basically just like we don't want to accidentally sound like the French. Change words, go ahead.
Oh, I'm thinking larboard, starboard.
Yeah.
I prefer on boats the portbird stow in the strong bed.
No, that's a mechanic in a infamous Final Fantasy XIV raid, like larboard and starboard, and nobody understands it. They always refers to directions, and unfortunately, it's a raid wide either on the left or the right, and people always pick the wrong direction and they get wrecked. So those words reminded me that entirely too much of that.
Which way did Leroy Jenkins go? Left or right?
In the way that into annoyance, which is the most annoying cardinal direction.
Straightforward. Got it. Yeah, so that's the Entropy Center. It's
Sounds pretty cool,
pretty
actually.
good.
Yeah.
I'm going to complete it probably in the next week or so because I do want to eventually get to Pentiment and also finish up Soul Hackers
And
2
me
before the end of the
too.
year.
I haven't heard. I'm trying to be in media black about that game, but I'm actually really curious about that game. So, just
Oh, I
give me a
thought you'd
simple
actually be
is it
playing
good or
it.
not.
That's why I alluded to it in the intro.
Oh, really?
And I made a mistake because it doesn't actually take place in medieval times. It takes place like roughly, I think, 100 years after medieval times.
Yeah. it's
So
kinda like
I
right
was
on that
wrong on
cusp.
those dates.
Yeah.
That's our dose of pedantry for the day. But Kappa, what have you been playing?
Oh man, it's a game almost as old. This is like, I don't know. Maybe you would guess I'm playing Lord of the Rings Online. It's
Ooh,
celebrating its
That thing is still
15th
online?
anniversary with a brand new DLC. I have no fucking clue why I got back into this. I think Dickachu said something about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I haven't played that in a while. I should check in. I'm utterly addicted to this game again, all over again. It is like it's grown old in all the best ways an MMO can, where it's just like weird systems and layers and none of it really matters. Like there's things in the game that are just like when it drops, it's like it literally says this is obsolete. Go ahead and toss it out. But the community is fantastic. Everybody I've met has just been nice as hell. And the game's gotten weirdly specific in certain ways. Like they've got a community-based musical crafting system where people will like play lutes and drums and like it's all MIDI sounds almost, right? Like just about that tier. And what they'll do is people will basically release like chords for what did I hear last night? What's that song where it's like in a white room with a black curtain?
that
I
would
don't
be
know.
White Room by Cream.
Cream, yeah, that's it. So like there's like a band of hobbits standing around in the middle of the city playing Cream. Just like it's almost too surreal, right? But
It
it's
does.
like
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
it's wild. Like I just don't know how. It's like a time capsule. It's like walking into a community from 2005, which is basically what it is, right? and it's like nothing else happened in the outside world. We're just gonna play Cream with
See.
our hobbits.
You hear a lot of "What's up" and stuff like
Oh
that.
no.
It's the people who have stuck with it forever, right? And like you would think, okay, people are coming back because it's weird, it's an expansion, whatever, right? They gave everybody like everybody who came back, you get like cool little cosmetics and stuff and a bunch of access, and you can level your character automatically all the way up to maximum, which I did it and then promptly realized I have no clue what I'm doing and started a new character instead. But it's such a weird time capsule of a game. MMOs and me have always been best pals, right? So I went from EverQuest. Well, actually, I went for a game called The Realm. If you want to get real old school, I went from that to EverQuest, bounced around to like 50 different MMOs that no longer tabula rasa and crap like that. World of Warcraft forever with all my friends, and then just kind of stuck around after that, and then tried every little weird MMO that was going to be the next WoW killer that ended up never even coming close. But this game just kind of sat in the middle of all that. It was never the big name that half of those other MMOs that I mentioned were. I can remember when basically like The Matrix Online is going to be the next MMO. Asheron's Call, Ultima Online, like all these games that kind of came and went. And this little plucky, I mean, it's got the Lord of the Rings license, so it's not like it's unheard of, but this game's just been here, existing, doing weird stuff with music and like a really positive community. All the assholes have left far longer ago, and I like it. Like I can see myself playing this for a while, weirdly. One of the other things that I've noticed about it, right, and this is kind of part of the time capsule part of it, right, but 10, 15 years ago, nobody would have blinked an eye about playing $14 a month to play an MMO. It was just a thing you did, right? Hey, you want to keep playing? Keep ponying up cash, right? That shit doesn't happen anymore, right? So this game was like, well, how do we adapt to that? What do we do, kind of? And I think a few MMOs from that period, most notably WoW, tried to figure it out, right? And this strikes a really nice balance, I think, between yes, we're free to play, but if you want all these other things, you have to be a VIP, which is your monthly fee, right? A lot of it does feel nickel and dimey when you kind of start out, right?
Yeah.
But then you start to realize that all this stuff can be bought with in-game currency if you just grind it out, which is how MMOs used to be anyway, right? So it doesn't bristle as much for me because I can. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I will say, and I'm sorry to cut in, that I do really appreciate a game being more direct about, like, when it's trying to basically take you for your shirt and all your worth.
Yeah.
Like it's...
You log in, and the first thing you notice from many MMO players, wow, I've only got 40 inventory slots. I wonder how I get more inventory slots. Do people craft bags? Can I go buy? No, you have to go buy them, right? And you can buy them with Latro points, or you can spend real money. And the Latro points at first, you're like, wow, this is going to take me forever to get these Latro points. But I would say you probably get about 300 per zone if you fully grind out a zone. Do all the quests, meet all the areas, and then so basically that's your free 5-slot upgrade. And then when you start to think about it like in terms of what if I was grinding out a bag slot, you kind of equal out in the long run. You know what I mean? So is it nickel and diamond? Yeah, it is. It definitely wants you to be a paying member. And that's the only way a game like this can exist because that's how it was monetized. That's how it was built, right? So you've got basically two options: go free to play and annoy the shit out of people, or just say, no, we're just going to keep charging $14.95 a month or whatever. And they took the annoy the shit out of people in a way. And is it annoying? Yeah, it gets really annoying sometimes. But also then sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to grind this out, or maybe I'm going to kick them $5. I don't know.
Have you watched Josh Strife Hayes' Worst MMO? Yeah, because I'm immediately thinking of some of those free-to-play MMOs where there's 7 different currencies and or some of those Korean MMOs that like the moment you start, like the please give us money window just immediately opens.
Yeah, this one, I wouldn't say it's please give us money. I would describe it as this. Hey, you can do all this stuff. Go ahead, right? The in-game currency is eventually going to get you where you want as long as you're willing to grind it out. This is more kind of like that mobile monetization where if you don't want to deal with this shit, then you can pay us. And, we've got these points right here in the store. They've got basically 3 currencies, but the real push isn't towards the currency, it's towards the VIP. Hey, you don't got to worry about any of this shit if you're VIP, right? You can buy a house and you don't have to pay upkeep for your house. You just get that in-game house and you keep it as long as you're still VIP. Versus, hey, if you want to stay in your house, you got to go grind this stuff out, right? Which
got to keep a subscription.
Yeah.
I'm immediately thinking of my game of choice, which has just the worst housing market problems right now.
Real world.
Oh God.
So I'm enjoying it, and part of it is I might be the fucking weirdest person in the world, but every fall I get real into Lord of the Rings shit again. I don't know what it is. Like fall hits and I want to put on.
It's a Harvest Hobbit kind of franchise.
That's kind of
like that.
The same thing with me in Castlevania.
Yeah, it's just weird.
But that's like season, like that's Halloween, right?
It is, but that's kind of. It used to be Halloween. Now it's mostly stretched into just late summer to early winter. I really like
you're just
Castlevania.
Expanding spooky season outward, which I approve of.
Yeah,
go for it, man.
It's just so weird to me because it's like, man, it's October. I'm gonna start watching The Hobbit. I don't even really like The Hobbit. I'm gonna start watching The Hobbit, And then every year I notice myself doing it more and more and more, like just getting back into Lord of the Rings stuff, and I read the books again. I watch the movies again. I watched that stupid show I didn't even really like. Watched it over again, So, I don't know. Maybe part of that is just it's hitting at the right place. The one thing I will say, this game has the best music. I mean, it is it's like some orchestra guy got bored and just recorded the tracks of this game. It is gorgeous. Every time you go into a new area, you're just swells and it's great. But I think part of it is just I'm always going to have that Lord of the Rings nostalgia. This game has a really interesting system for telling you the Lord of the Rings story. You're always kind of in the peripheral. It's kind of Forrest Gumping your way along. Every important thing that happens, like Gandalf's like, "Hello, whatever your name is. What do you think of what we should do with this ring?" It tries to involve you into the story as much as they can. And the smart thing is that they have the license to everything. Go back as far as you want in Lord of the Rings history, all the way up to stuff that happens after the movies. They've got the rights to all of it. So you're not running into that problem that dumb fucking show is running into, where it's like, well, we can't tell any of the interesting stuff, so we've got to skirt around the edges of stuff that is cool to try to tell a story. So good for them thinking forward, at least there.
Oh shit! I'm so sorry. I need to say this now.
Okay.
This is an interruption, but this is also 100% holy shit Avocado Gamescast news.
Is it the thing that I was just about to post in chat? I was waiting for.
Are you saying what you're about to post was Yuji Naka, co-creator of
yes!
Sonic, arrested
yes!
for insider trading?
Yes, Yuji Naka, the creator of Sonic, was just arrested for insider trading. Sonic Watch 2022 continues to give. Oh my god!
This is awesome. I mean, I'm sorry for him. Not that sorry, but.
Did it break
No, we have to talk about this. So, Yuji Naka, while he was working for Square Enix, reportedly learned about the production of a tactical RPG for mobile platforms called Dragon Quest TAC, which has now been released. And that was being co-developed with a company called Aiming. So Yuji Naka allegedly bought 10,000 shares of Aiming before the information about that RPG became public.
That's rookie shit right there.
Yep, so he and 2 other people were arrested for insider trading. This is amazing. Yuji Naka, the creator of Sonic and Ballin' Wonderworld.
Oh, man.
2021 Game of the Year, Ballin' Wonderworld.
You're never going to get your money back from him now for Ballin' Wonderworld.
Oh, I didn't spend a dime. I just played the demo. I was like, I got my fill.
It is available on, I believe, one of the PlayStation tiers as well. If you seriously want to play that, I have it downloaded. It just kind of stares at me. I have not played it now, but yes, it is readily available.
Man, this has been a breaking news podcast, huh? We like basically 2 stories
broke
right as
like
we
an
went
hour
into
ago,
recording, and one while we were recording.
Um, it's actually kind of great. I used to do a series for Source Gaming where I kind of reviewed games that were bad, or at least games that had like a very negative reputation. And I've been wanting to get back into one for a while. And I was like, you know what? It should be Balan Wonderworld. And then, but every time,
Man.
but like every time I want to, some new news comes up, and I was like, wait, I gotta hold off and see how this plays out.
It usually takes a lot to get Merve to like fuck this game levels. He's like, oh yeah.
I admit my heart
get
stopped.
ready.
I admit my heart stopped just a little, and I'll explain later with what I've been playing. I thought that was going to be Yuji Horii rather than Yuji Naka.
Oh, you can get into it. I'm pretty much Lord of the Rings out.
Yeah,
Go
because
ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have anything else to say
'Cause
on this other than that.
because I saw Dragon Quest and I'm like, oh no, no. I actually want to see Dragon Quest 12 eventually. I'll make this super quick because you said one game there, but yes, to kind of go on the flip side of Lord of the Rings. It's funny because the last time I was on this podcast, which was in 2019, because I checked the Skype notes, Shadowbringers, the Final Fantasy 14 expansion, was like a month old. And now Endwalker has been out for about a year now, so that's very weird.
Oh yeah, Endwalker was that came out. Was that the new one where they basically redid all the dungeons and everything?
Endwalker basically ended the 10-year story, and now the patch notes.
It's like their Cataclysm, right? Their version of Cataclysm from WoW. Like basically reset.
It was basically the story of Hydaelyn and all of those things just wrapped up in a bow, and let's just do other things. I was kind of thinking like how time flies, because I'm sure like back in that previous year I was like, oh yeah, this Shadowbringers thing, like, this game's exciting, and there. But no, I didn't want to talk about that because I talk about that way too much on the Avocado, as you probably know. But I did want to say that one of the games I am playing right now is Dragon Quest XI-S, basically the Switch version, which became a definitive edition as well. Which was on the PS4. Conveniently, it was free via PlayStation Extra or whatever I'm paying for. I had, over the past few months, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to play a lot of Dragon Quest games. So
Are you gonna play Tact eventually?
I don't think so. No, but
Okay.
but I loaded up. I loaded up the games that my totally legitimate Nintendo 3DS. That's totally legitimate in every way. and I played 4 through 6, and then I played 9. Because I'd already completed 7 and 8 and then 1 and 11, and I was like, man, like, for some reason I just got that, that kick to play it there. And which is funny because I've finished 11 before and I'm still playing it there, which is keeping me away from the game that I should be playing right now, which is God of War Ragnarok.
Which I'll be talking about in a minute.
But
you're actually keeping up with games, unlike the rest of us.
But yeah, no, actually, you know what? I'll go there. But yeah, it's I think I said this the last time I did a Games of the Year thing for Dragon Quest, which was Dragon Quest XI, where it's such weird comfort food to me, it's strange for me to say because back in the day I was, and I still kind of am. I mean, I probably like Final Fantasy more than all three of you combined, probably.
Oh, you definitely like
pretty
more
much.
than Merve.
Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that.
Yeah,
The only Final Fantasy games I've played are Kingdom Hearts games.
But yeah, so I have, I'm attached to them. But it used to be, oh, you must like one or the other. I'm like, no, actually, I like both for completely different reasons. And it's funny because
You're like the mythical guy who likes both Star Wars and Star Trek.
Yeah, and Doctor Who. It's like,
Doctor Who.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Considering all three of those shows are radically different. But it's so funny. It's kind of like, you were talking earlier about, kind of the grind and how you'll take it as you go, with grind there. What I'm doing right now basically it's the third part of the game. It's like actually it's technically post game, but there's a best ending you can go to, and I'm just slowly with an FAQ, because I've completed the game before, just going one by one and collecting stuff slowly, and I'm just thinking, shouldn't I be playing God of War? I really like God of War, actually. But it's like, I'm just going to sit here and do this instead. It's so weird.
It's one of the best things about gaming, because like, if you're really loving a movie or loving a TV show or something, you're like, this is going to have to end, right? Like, at some point, this movie's over and I got to walk away from it. You get that weird, like, kind of empty feeling, Like, remember when people were going to, like, see, like, therapists after seeing Avatar? Because they're like, oh, shit, I don't live there. You know what I mean?
I've never seen that movie, and so but I remember reading stories such as that. I'm thinking, I don't get it. I'm just going to walk over here now. Like,
but like I get it from the standpoint of like, there's definitely games where I'm like, I'm not done with this. I finished this story, but I want to live in this world a while longer. Just go around and I think the best games know that and let you do that. Even some like the earlier Assassin's Creeds were like, yep, you beat the game, go have fun, go enjoy this beautiful scenery or whatever. And I think that's one of the highs of gaming that a lot of people don't get, is when you nail a story and you get it right, people just want to stay in that world and stay there, and they can, a
little bit longer. Just
yeah.
Going back to what you said about the Avatar phenomenon, I actually feel like that too. Apparently people in my family have noted that, like, after I play a game that's really long or really big or was like a very big time commitment, I actually fall into a short depression, because it's like,
wow,
it's done. Like, that's what happened when I'm trying to think of, like, it was weird this year because I had it with Xenoblade 3, I believe, a little bit. It didn't happen during Elden Ring, but only because of the fact that I was having to juggle Elden Ring and Pokemon with half of a year of playing Kingdom Hearts games all in a row.
Oh God.
Yeah. So
no,
I don't know whether I admire you or pity you.
No, I actually I was also that person. I want to say I did play most of the Kingdom Hearts games up to 3. I don't know why to this day.
When?
I did the same thing. I pity myself. So.
But yeah, I mean, so I do think there is something to be said about just stay in this world. And I get it. I get exactly what you're saying. When you finished everything, you've got everything you can get, but you know what? Damn it, I still. And I've talked about this before. I'm the kind of person who just always has games like ready to go. I don't always clear my hard drive every single time I finish a game or whatever. And there's definitely some games where I'm like, I just like Red Dead Redemption. I don't even like that game. I've never beat it, and I just have it installed because I'm like, man, sometimes it'd be nice to just like ride around on a horse, and go down to some like stream and stuff like that. It's weird. I'd rather live in that world for an hour or two and not uninstall the game.
It's slightly different, but when they were selling GTA 5 for like $5. Like in the PlayStation Store, it's kind of like a, hey, first one's free, kid, to kind of get you in there.
Yeah.
And I bought the PS5 version, even though I owned the PS3 version back then. And I recall, I don't like this game.
Yeah.
but one day I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to just suffer through just the terrible characters and the hackneyed writing, and it's like, I'm going to finish this stupid game, even though I don't know. Like, I don't know why. There are hundreds of games I can play outside of that. A game like GTA 5, known niche game that no one has ever talked about ever. I mean, like, why?
You know what?
Yeah.
I finally beat it like 2 or 3 years ago, and do you know what was the thing that pushed me over the line to just finishing it? Was I went online and found out that you load your own music. And once I did that, it was like, oh man, this changed everything, because there's so much just bullshit driving. I mean, I get it, it's GTA, right? But that game has so many just drive from here to here type things. But if I'm at least listening to music I like, it kind of changed the whole thing for me. But Yeah, living in a game world is just something that I think anybody who really enjoys it as a hobby eventually does, and just has those ready to go and just says, okay, this is a world I wanna spend more time in. And GTA is fine for that. Weirdly,
Yeah.
it sounds almost like sociopathic to be like, yeah, I love but no, I get it. I mean, there's like, you can go drive out to like one of those areas in the county or whatever that's called, go find a little cool mountain to look at.
It is fun to
Find
drive
like
Grand Theft Auto.
a jump you can do.
Go look for that ghost.
Yeah.
It's fun to drive in Grand Theft Auto. Arguably, that's kind of the only fun thing to do in Grand Theft Auto. But
Yeah,
look,
Yeah.
this is why like one of the best things in the arguably the best thing in the entire series has always been the licensed music soundtracks.
Yeah.
Like,
you got to listen to it either way, right? So
yeah, like I'm just gonna listen to this station that's just gonna play R&B music for like 40 minutes.
Oh, there's nothing greater than like getting a stunt jump as a guitar solo.
Yeah.
It's just such a great feeling.
If you want to know what a weirdo I am, sometimes I'll just listen to like the talk radio, like the fake talk radio.
that's kind of that is simultaneously heartening and respectable and kind of depressing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, these, like, you listen to like these people like ranting about like fake politicians. You're like, yeah, fuck that guy. Wait a minute, they got me here.
I was gonna. One thing I always like to say, because I'm kind of illiterate when it comes to filmmaking, is I thought the Flashback FM from GTA 3 was this, amazing parody of 80s music, and then I realized it was basically the soundtrack to Scarface.
Yeah, they just copied it like almost song from song, right? Like a bunch of Blondie and stuff, and yeah.
It's like suddenly I'm like watching Scarface one day. It's like, why is this GTA 3 tracks playing? She's on fire. Like, oh,
now I know.
Now I know why. They just basically took the Scarface soundtrack.
In that way, they did not, in fact, push it to the limit.
Yeah.
Speaking of pushing things to the limit, Wolfman, I think you've been playing God of War Ragnarok.
I indeed have a game that has, its own connections to some of the other things we've discussed. Much like your game, I have a wacky side character. In this case, it's a severed head with an Irish accent.
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Oh, I thought you were going to say Atreus was the wacky side character.
No.
He's pretty normal.
Now he's pretty. I think I think he's more grounded this time. Yeah, to clarify, I'm maybe a couple hours into it, so I'm not going to have like some gripping stuff here. But
I will not deal with plot spoilers, other than to say that Atreus is obviously back. Mimir, Kratos' new friend, who is a Norse giant who he had to decapitate to rescue, and so he just like has this severed head on the back of his like gross like rusted blood-soaked belt, talking to him about like fucking Norse mythological politics.
The original God of War, the remake, I should clarify. We were talking about earlier, Merve's game, the annoying sidekick. I think one of the reasons why the God of War remake works so well is because they nailed the character beats, the voice acting, just the way it's written. Yeah. Where I don't hate where it's kind of funny in the original where Kratos will just they'll be asked tell a random story about hunting or whichever, and he says it in the most weird, dry, just embarrassing way, and it's hilarious because it suits the character. And
this is a guy who literally just spent the entirety of his life being an insane psychotic, like sexist genocidal lunatic who fucking like cut people's legs off for fun, and he's just like he's at a point in his life where he can't really be punished for it, and he can't really like repent himself for it. He's just kind of like lonely and depressed and like not really.
But enough about Elon Musk. Let's talk about God of War.
I you know what? As sad as I am that he dressed up as Wario, it could have been worse. He could have dressed up as Kratos. But anyway, that's far from the actual point that any of us want to hear. God of War Ragnarok is very good. I want to get 2 points out of the way quick. First is my major complaint, which is the same complaint I had for the game to which it's a sequel from 2018. I really am not a fan of incremental upgrade systems 90% of the time. I really don't like them. I feel like they're part of this weird Skinner box thing of like, well, maybe you'll get this one like hundredth of a thing. And I think it doesn't really work for a game with combat this aggressively visceral. Like, like this is a game where you can just straight up like throw a knife into a person's chest repeatedly and cut off part of their neck. Like it's visceral and it feels great, and I do feel like
if you do if you do 25 times, you get an upgrade.
Yeah, like I kind of wish it was more kind of Zelda-y, where the maybe they were less frequent, but felt bigger. Like I don't feel like the actual upgrades to my axe feel that stronger. But anyway, and the other thing is this, and I'm just going to get this other part out of the way. It is exceptionally weird to play this because of the fact that like fundamentally the disconnect between like good new God of War and original God of War still hasn't set in for me.
Yeah, 100%.
I played God of War 1 and 2. I considered buying a PS3, and one of the games I was considering for when I was going to buy it was God of War 3. Didn't play any of the crappy spin-offs where you meet Kratos' half-brother or you fight like the D-list Olympian gods.
I think one of the smartest things they did going from God of War 1, 2, and 3 to the reboot is I feel like the Norse setting fits him so much better. And I wonder if they just realized that or if it's just something they lucked into.
I don't think it's that it suits them better. I think that the better writing suits God of War better. Like,
a little more dour. But
I mean, like, it's not super dour. Like, this is very much in the grand scheme of all modern blockbusters. This is a jokey joke game. Like, there's a lot of comedy bits. There's a lot of quips. There's a lot of like goofy character interaction stuff. There's a lot of deadpan. There's a lot. I mean, there is a part in the game where you get a temporary sidekick who basically throws giant like colorful bombs, basically. like essentially attacking with giant confetti. Like it's goofy, and it also manages to do a lot of work at making the world of the Norse gods feel goofy. In fact, that's one of my favorite parts of this is that, after a lifetime of like having been as a child really into different kinds of mythology, Norse mythology being a big one, like it's been kind of tiring to like go and see so many modern versions of the Norse gods that are all kind of exactly the same, right? Like Odin's the big serious guy, Thor is just Marvel Thor, Loki's kind of like evil, and that's kind of it. And the big villain in this one is Odin, played by Richard Schiff from The West Wing. He acts like a fucking mob boss. It's amazing. Like he literally is this like creepy, like nasty, weird mob boss who's like kind of gives you light threats but he's also, a god who is a full imperialist who you literally go to the other realms. The big adventure is you go to all of the 9 realms, including the realms you went to in the last game, but they're very different than they used to be. And you're kind of seeing this like weird thing where it's like he is a colonialist. And the people you're fighting with and you're meeting are people who have been kind of broken under the wheel of his oppression. And like that's compelling storytelling and everything. But that's also not what I expect from modern day depictions of the Norse myths. Mm-hmm. Like it's way more colorful, it's way more thoughtful.
So it's almost like it's taking these surface aesthetic elements or these familiar beats that we all know and then remixing them and almost layering something more thoughtful and
it's interesting
deeper underneath.
The other Viking epic game that came out recently, Valhalla, kind of flips that, right? And instead of being more serious and thoughtful about it, it's like, this is all part of the grand conspiracy. That obviously fits the Assassin's Creed world more. So these types of gods they've always existed, but their existence has always been to basically force humans to do stuff that they wouldn't normally do. So maybe somebody's just all like reading all this Norse mythology and trying to figure out something to do
I
with it
think
right now.
I'll be honest. That sounds more like someone at one of the many like people in the Ubisoft minds being like, how can we basically include this other stuff that's popular, and
Right.
how we're just going to do it is just we're all going to fit it into this conspiracy. I will say,
Of course, their conspiracy is their whole thing, but it's just weird from the perspective that like Viking games all of a sudden hit, a little bit different. I don't know if that's a society thing, if that's the games figuring it out, if it's just working, but it's interesting right now that like there's probably like 3 really big Viking games out there now, with Northgard being another one.
Yeah. The also one thing to note, this is set at Ragnarok. It's set in the Fimbulwinter, the 3-year winter of Norse mythology. Very early on, you go to basically a desert climate, and one of the characters is just, well, I guess because it says Fimbulwinter, so I assumed it was snow, but I guess it's just a climatological winter in a different way for all of these places, which is the game giving you a nice nod and saying, yeah, we're not just going to do an ice level all the time.
Good.
Yeah, there are jungles, deserts, some really weird, creepy forests and stuff. Yeah.
I did make it to that second world, and I was super pleased because I admit playing that first world, which is just winter, just cold, bitter winter, done extremely well. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I love winter.
But I also live in a place where it's snowing a lot and it's cold and very bleak and dark. And I'm thinking, oh no! Like I was super happy and was like, yay, the bright sunny place now. I like this now.
Come home from work and it's just like, all right, time to go back to the sad weather mines, right?
Yes.
As a side note, the specific realm we're talking about is Svartalheim, which is in Norse mythology. That's the realm of the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, it's because it's dwarves. Most fiction usually has it being like an actual giant like mine, like a basically lethal lava land or hazy maze cave from Mario 64. Like it's the underground level. There are caves, there are mines, but it's generally like bright. It's kind of a weird like picturesque desert filled with rivers, and it's like that's great. Like that was to me like, yeah, I see where you're going, game. If there is also one weird thing, I'm over 10 hours into the game. I've so far got into I'm going to mention the actual Norse realms specifically that I've been seen before. That include not all of them, but they include Midgard and Svartalheim, a return to Alfheim from the first game, and now I'm in Vanaheim. And like I'm over 10 hours in. I've met many major supporting characters, fought a lot of big bosses, killed one of the most famous monsters of Norse mythology. Not going to say which one, but it's a famous one. And like I'm not really sure how far into the plot I am. Like it really feels like this game has to be the last game set in the Norselands. Like it really feels like Kratos has to die, and then Atreus presumably moves on and becomes the next god of war and moves into, I'm going to assume, ancient Egypt.
That would be a good one.
I would personally I was hoping personally for him to go to the Aztec gods first, but I think the Egyptian gods are probably the ones that...
A little more name brand recognition,
yeah.
I guess.
I mean, if they go to the Aztecs, and they can bring back Kratos pulling out hearts or whatever he used to do.
I mean, Atreus is gonna do that. I mean, look, God of War will always be ultra violent, and anyone who is claiming that this or the previous reboot is doing disservice to the violence because of how woke they are or whatever. Again, you regularly cut guys in half, not even through button prompts, just through regular X-wings.
There's not been a lot that I've seen from people streaming it that makes me feel like they pulled any punches there. I think the length, a lot of people are talking about, and I mean, a lot of people are just, I just played God of War 1 because it just came out on PC not too long ago, so I really wasn't about to start this new one right off the bat. I'll play it when it comes out on PC and everything, but just kind of feels weird that like, at least for PC people, it probably feels like it just released,
Yeah. The last game was also like this too. It was a road trip where you had like a big goal. You had to go. You and Atreus had to go to some place and do something, and things were just kind of blocking your path at every step, kind of like a Bioshock level. This one is kind of like that, except they so far haven't really fully gotten to what the journey is. They've been going on a bunch of journeys to find that, which is weird. I think it's kind of odd narratively, but again, it's like I don't know how it's all going to come back together. But it also does have the fun of like you really don't fully know, and I think that fits the game the reboot's big visual gimmick, which is that
figure it out as you go, kind of.
Yeah. For people who are unfamiliar, the gimmick is that it's presented as the equivalent of like a one-shot movie, where it's just one continuous take and there's no cuts. All the like loading screens are seamless, as is God of War standards. There's no cuts in the cutscenes. Everything just flows in as though it's just one thing, which is very cool. And it is a gimmick. It's a gimmick I think is really fun. I actually am working on an article about a boss fight, about the first main boss fight of the first game, and kind of how it uses that gimmick. But it's fun. It's nice. This is about like my personal center for like my interest in modern day traditional AAA Western blockbuster games. Just God of War, and I'm incredibly happy that this stupid series about like having like sex mini games and like
press X to sex
and like pulling a man's head off with your bare hands and like all of this horrible psychosis has sort of been turned into this weirdly thoughtful and serious and compelling like take about like this guy trying to break free of his like horrible like upbringing and choices and like and dealing with the fact that he was like the most toxic masculine video game protagonist in forever.
Probably like a metaphor for the developers themselves, like
oh yeah, I mean
what have we
yeah.
done?
I'm fairly certain Corey Barlog.
Yeah.
Barlog.
I don't think
Not
Balrog, but I don't. It's probably Barlog.
Balrog's from Lord of the Rings.
And Street Fighter.
He's grown up.
He's Barlog. Kari Barlog has been, who had directed the first one and is producing this, did not direct it, but is still supporting the game. And I think kind of doesn't want to really direct one and leave it to other people going forward, but he's been very open that like a lot of his relationship with the game is basically like him being a father, him becoming older, and him kind of coming to terms with some of the toxicity in the franchise that he basically helped create.
Well, it's good to see that it is growing up and has been garnering a lot of accolades, including many, many nominations at the 2022 Game Awards. It's one of 6 Game of the Year nominees, in addition to a bunch of other nominations it's garnered. The other 5 nominees for Game of the Year are A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I am not at all surprised that to see A Plague Tale, Elden Ring, Ragnarok, and Horizon Forbidden West. I am very surprised to see Stray and Xenoblade here.
That feels almost like a tech demo at times. I mean, I played it. I don't know. I don't know about Game of the Year, sure.
The only one of these I've played is Xenoblade, and I haven't even finished it yet. So it's not for me to judge.
I was going to say Stray. I wanted to play Stray, and for whatever reason, this game that was kind of in third person gave me motion sickness, which made me really sad.
Part of it's the perspective, I think. I kind of get what you mean because I did play it. I kind of get the perspective being weird. Like everything feels floaty, and I get it.
Because I was super bummed out. Like I want to play this game featuring a cat. But I couldn't.
It was all right.
So just to back up for a second, when I say I'm surprised, I don't mean like in terms of quality or reception, because all of these games were reviewed very, very strongly. I just don't typically think of like a janky Nintendo RPG being a Game of the Year candidate, and I wouldn't think that an indie game published by Annapurna that is like essentially just a standard action adventure game would get this kind of nomination. But there are a whole bunch of like 4 of these are action adventure titles.
That's
getting
originally I
nominations.
thought when you put, I was like, I don't even know what I got to say about the Game Award. I'm kind of like, I was like, oh, what am I going to talk about? But I do kind of hate that it's. I don't have evidence to back this up. This is the feeling type thing. I hate that Game of the Year has slowly become action adventure Game of the Year.
It's frustrating.
Like there's so many other games that are doing great stuff, and it's just I don't want it to always boil down to which was the cool action adventure game that everybody played that year.
I mean, we also did. I mean, in general, I agree with you, but Unpacking did win last year, which I think at least.
Yeah, well, I think that says a little more about the state of what games were out last year.
You mean It Takes Two won last year?
You're right. Oh, damn it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It was It Takes Two. Sorry.
Which
I don't think Unpacking was nominated for Game of the Year. I think it was nominated for maybe Games for Impact and one of the indie categories. I'll have to check.
Sorry.
they always had the token indie one. I think that's not anything crazy, but
like Hades.
What I was thinking about was like, what did I really want to talk about? And I think it's such a joke, but like not a joke, but we've always talked about this is the gaming Oscars, right? And one of the things that either frustrates you or you love about the Oscars is they're like, these are the best movies, not from how they sold, not from what they did, but these are the best movies that were made this year.
Yeah.
In whatever genre and whatever. And I think that the Game of the Year could stand for a little more, hey, is this really the best game out there? And I'm not saying any of these games were bad, but Horizon it didn't really seem like it hit any buttons for most people other than being a continuation of a game they already loved, right?
Horizon kind of had the thing that Horizon 1 had, where it came out and it was, got accolades, but it was also kind of aggressively overshadowed by another big Japanese open world that actually felt pretty revolutionary at the time.
And it's just like I wonder if the goal eventually is to say like, hey, look, this is going to sound crazy, but you know what? It's a really good year for Modern Warfare. Let's go ahead and get COD out there as a Game of the Year. Sure, let's really. It doesn't have to just be that action adventure game. That
I mean, I feel like I agree in general on that, but like I mean, modern Call of Duty is about as aggressively mainstream as it gets.
Right.
So
right.
I don't feel like
there's also like strategy games that were received very well this year, like say Victoria 3 or puzzle and tactical RPGs like say Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope. There are plenty of games out there in other genres that did have pretty wide appeal and pretty good reception.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit disheartening. And I say this as someone who likes action adventure titles. It's still a little disheartening to see this kind of narrowness in Game of the Year, and it also extends to the other categories. These are the games that are nominated in art direction and music.
Part of for me, the appeal I've always had about like award shows, and I say this actually partially as the host of the Peely's Awards, the Avocado's Worst of the Year podcast or Worst of the Year award show, is like, for me, the appeal of award shows for good stuff, for stuff I like and stuff I don't, is that you can spread the love around, right? You can like represent a wide variety of corners, and I think this is something that frustrates me in the Game Awards and also in other kinds of like American award shows, which I think are generally a lot less good than the Game Awards. I do think the Game Awards, for all its faults and all its weird advertising like shit and all of its the Keeley of it all, like, is better than the Oscars and certainly better than the Golden Globes.
I mean, I will say, like, I don't think of the Game Awards as the equivalent of the Oscars.
Fair.
I think of them as more like an equivalent of the Golden Globes because they are not decided on by an academy. They're decided on mostly by press, like the Golden Globes.
Yeah, that's very fair. And obviously, in that comparison, the Game Awards comes out even better.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Golden Globes are a disaster.
The thing last year where they had to read them off Twitter.
Yep.
But,
I guess for me, I would just rather it be like, we don't just silo off indie stuff to this one joke of a category, and
Agreed.
like they can play with the big boys if they're doing just as many amazing things as these other games. And yeah, they don't have the budget to God of War every year, and I don't need every soundtrack to. You know what the best soundtrack of a game I played this year was? The Artful Escape. Was that nominated
That came out last
last
year.
year? Okay, was that nominated last year for music?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I hope it was, but like it doesn't always need to be strings and orchestras, and you know what I mean. Like that's to me, like I think when we talk about art style versus graphic fidelity or things like that, I want to leave room for other games that aren't these big 15-hour, 20-hour action adventure games that tell this fantastic, amazing, great story, but at the same time it's like the same thing that we play every year. That's
the 2 of the 6 Game of the Year nominations aren't just from the same genre. They're from the same genre and by the same company.
Yeah.
Who also won in 2020 and in 2018.
Yeah. And there, it's kind of. I mean, I know you're enjoying God of War. I know I enjoyed, but at the same time, I wouldn't stump for another game to just like, okay, well, this should be Game of the Year just because it does the same thing the other one does too, and that one Game of the Year. It's just kind of like a.
I definitely think God of War should be nominated for writing. I think it's fair to nominate it for Game of the Year, but yeah, here's what I would say: I would nominate it for Game of the Year. I would not vote for it to win. I would probably vote. I would vote for Elden Ring in this case.
Yeah, I think Elden Ring probably has the strongest case, at least for me. And I don't even like Souls games, so if I'm saying that, I just think it does more and puts it in, and it was more of a part of the cultural conversation, of its time than a lot of these other games. And I think the other thing that it does is it's a genre maker in a lot of ways. Everybody's trying their hand at these, Souls likes now. And I think
open worldies.
Yeah, and I think that's when you kind of know you've made it, when other companies are trying to do what you did, maybe successfully, maybe not. But it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think the idea behind the Game Awards is whatever. I mean, of course you're going to give awards to something, but Keighley is getting there. I really do. I think he's getting there. I think
you've said this for like the past 3 years.
Yeah, but I mean, every year it's gotten a little better. It really has.
I mean, the fact that he does take time for indie stuff and for games for impact stuff, like he does actually want to try to spread the love to a certain extent. I think he's just not great at it.
Yeah,
So speaking of games for impact, I do have a gripe about this.
Yeah.
The category description is that it's about a game with a
social
message.
Yeah.
Right, but like,
what the hell does that mean? And in practice,
what does that mean in practice? It ends up being essentially emotional indies.
Yeah, that's exactly what
maybe
I would say.
like emotional indies with like made by or with marginalized characters, and that deserves to be highlighted. But that also deserves to be highlighted in the big categories too.
Well, but like,
I get what you're saying. Every time
what I do want to mention, like, I want to call out a specific nominee here. And it's actually the only one I played, which is A Memoir Blue. There's nothing about that game that is pro-social. It's like, if you're saying featuring someone of Chinese descent just automatically is pro-social, just like, it's almost condescending in a way.
Yeah.
Right? To say that a game that features a non-white character is inherently a pro-social game. There's nothing else about this game that has any kind of socio-political message that is deep, profound, or vital.
Yeah.
It's just about a girl reconnecting with her single mom.
I think about
like, there's nothing else there in it. And if that's the extent of what we're calling pro-social now, I'm not saying that, like, it is a bad game. It's actually a pretty terrible game. But I'm not saying that that kind of story is invalid or unworthy or couldn't tell something worthwhile. But I am really taking issue with this being pro-social or called pro-social just because it is emotional.
Yeah.
And that's really, it devalues the idea of the category to nominate stuff like this.
Yeah.
I totally get it. Because, like, it seemed like last year it was just Life is Strange, right? Like, and then they had a bunch of other stuff, I don't know. I don't know what their goal for the category is. I know what they say it is, right? But I don't get a good feeling for what it is. I feel like every year there's a game or two that makes sense that are nominated, and then everything else is just put in there to round out the category.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of it being like an award, they just do it as like, hey, these are important games, and it doesn't have to necessarily be something that wins. It's just these are the games that are moving things forward and shouldn't be overlooked, and they give it its own like feature, right, or something. But
yeah, I do think that's an underrated idea, of like trying to be like, we at the Academy specifically want to also put out martial hour, what influence we have directly into this.
Right. And the Oscars does that. I mean, obviously, like not just the Oscars, but a lot of other award shows are like, hey, these are things you probably missed that are worth taking the time, but it's not necessarily an award. Because in a weird way, like, how do you pit Life is Strange against Esther Was Alone or that Dragon Cancer, right? Like, I mean, it's, like you're kind of not saying that they would.
Did you just meld Dear Esther and Thomas Was Alone into one game?
Yeah, so put all four of those together. But you get what I'm saying? Like if you're saying, okay, what has an impact for me? Is it cancer? Is it, growing up as a youth that doesn't fit in? Is it, all those are important, right? You don't have to pick one. I guess is kind of what I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
so,
you're kind of forcing these ones to compete in an award that's specifically meant for, or maybe not explicitly, but kind of implicitly meant for some form of representation.
Right, yeah. And then so you're having to like categorize the representation, which one's representing more?
Which one represents better?
Yeah,
or like, you have Citizen Sleeper running against Endling. So what do you think's more important, anti-capitalism or environmentalism? Choose.
Yeah, it's also, yeah. It also kind of does this opposite thing where it's like, they're not common, but there are big games and bigger games and games that aren't just in the indie scene that do actually try to have like much more serious kinds of representation or much more serious, or have like surprisingly sophisticated social messages that are worthy of noting. And so then it's like, are we just kind of ignoring when the larger games try to do this? Are we saying that this is something that only the small games do?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 right now. It's exactly a game. I mean, this is a game about exploiting child soldiers for the benefit of like the already rich who are trying to prolong their lives.
Like Dragon Age Origins, right? Like, oh wow, this feels really representative, or things like that. But would that ever be a game for Impact? No.
Exactly. It's a category that almost is condescending by construction, because it relegates a certain class of games to only be honored here. On top of that, anything that's vaguely emotional, regardless of its pro-social or how pro-social or thought-provoking its message is eligible to be nominated here. It ends up being a mishmash of games with genuine, profound messaging and just games that made a couple of games journalists cry.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a really crude and kind of insulting way of putting it, but this needs to get cleaned up.
Yeah, and I love that they have it. I mean, it's a great step towards in the right direction, but I totally agree. I think it's something where the idea of the category needs to be, hey, this isn't just about you tried something, like really get into hey, we want people to play Life is Strange, regardless of it wins an award or not, because it tells an amazing story in a really cool way, and it's not a story you're going to get anywhere else. So go play it.
This is like, you know what? They should have multiple categories, and instead of using this stupid, vague pro-social message that doesn't really mean anything, just have multiple equivalents of games for Impact that reference different things.
I'm hoping that eventually that's where they go. You know what I mean? Why not?
Yeah.
Why not have it all like, hey, these games are important, and they all win the award. They're all emotionally impacting and stuff like that. But yeah, like I think like we all kind of said, when you're pitting it all against each other, it's like, okay, this is the best representation. Nobody else look anywhere else. We figured it out.
Yeah.
It's
kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I want to be on that team.
So, I do want to take a few like bets on predictions, because I think Wolf and Kappa, you mentioned that you thought Game of the Year was going to go to Elden Ring.
Well, initially, I did.
Initially, I think it's going to go to Ragnarok.
Yeah,
I
recency
think-
bias, or what are you thinking?
I don't think it's just recency bias. In fact, I think fewer people have played Ragnarok than will have played Elden Ring.
Yeah.
But I think Elden Ring is going to underperform because it has had persistent technical issues and a really
That's-
shoddy PC port.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to tank
I
it
don't.
because it actually didn't review well at PC outlets.
I don't think that's really going to matter as much. I think that basically the main thing is just that it's more frequent or it's more recent, and it's by Sony, a company that, you know, is pretty good at providing things to, like, to journalists. I'm not meaning in a sense of, like, some kind of payola thing or whatever, but, like, you know, they make their games easy to play. They make them accessible. They provide many of those disability features that are and accessibility features that are, you know, also being honored at the awards in a more clear and helpful award, I should note.
Yeah, I don't think that's underhanded. I
Yeah.
think accessibility features
Really
are
good.
a good and important part of video games.
When you launch Ragnarok, you are face first in accessibility options.
Yeah, very big ones. Like, the game is easy to get into. It's very easy to play. To be honest, I actually didn't realize it would even be nominated. I thought it was coming out too late for that.
Yeah, that is
I
kind
think
of
it just
interesting.
got in under the wire by 2
Yeah.
weeks, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's God of War or Elden Ring, which is probably not a very, you know, hot take of a guess. I think honestly, like, I don't want to push toward either one, but I don't really think any of the other ones are winning.
I think A Plague Tale is a dark horse considering
Yeah.
how many surprise nominations it got and how well it's been received. I don't think Horizon or Xenoblade
Yeah,
can do
Stray
it.
or Horizon, I
Xenoblade, I don't even know how it got in
Horizon
here.
and God of War sound like the same game if you kind of squint.
Yeah, kind
Yeah.
of. I mean, honestly,
I will
it
say-
feels like there could have been Airsats Norse stuff in Forbidden West.
I will say for Xenoblade, it feels to me, and I'm saying this not having finished it yet. I'm at 155 hours and still only in chapter 6. That game is massive. Yeah, it strikes me a little bit like this year's Nier Automata. This almost strikes me like a repeat of 2017, where the real big contenders were it was either going to be Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey. That would win everything.
Yeah.
And then you have like this kind of third string game that's super well received among the people who actually played it, but not that many people played it. And coincidentally, both the front runners were from the same. Well, this year they're not from the same company, but that year they're from the same company. So, yeah, it is a little strange how this is all shaken out. Sorry. go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I guess in this case, yeah, it got Elden Ring is Breath of the Wild and God of War is Mario Odyssey, but it's also but like weirdly enough, Horizon is still Horizon.
Do you wonder if it's like maybe Elden Ring and God
Yeah.
is like God of War almost split the vote? Is
No,
that
I
a
don't.
thing? And then
I mean,
And then a Plague
yeah,
Tale
Plague
comes
Tale
up the
comes
middle.
flying in.
I don't think that happens. I definitely don't think that happens for at least Horizon or Xenoblade. To be honest, I don't really care if Xenoblade wins. I don't put a lot of stock into this anyway, but I'm very happy it got nominated, though. I think that, like, just being a nominee for this week, the history of Xenoblade and its weird meteoric rise is genuinely for the most part, very positive thing in my eyes, and it's been very nice seeing the success it's gotten and the ability that it's used on its success to make better and more interesting success. So just it getting the nomination legitimately feels very nice, and again, not just because it's the only blockbuster there that isn't an action adventure.
I mean, this is a game with a side plot about you thwarting January 6th, so, you know, it's got stuff going on. I did want to mention a couple of games that I thought would legitimately stand a chance of getting nominated, but somehow missed the bar. I thought Neon White was going to get it for music. I really did. That thing has a banging soundtrack.
I think it goes back to what we were talking a little bit about earlier, though. Is they like a specific kind of soundtrack, you know?
Yeah.
It's like the, I don't know, John Williams soundtrack, or you know what I mean? Like that's what they really want.
Like that bombastic orchestral score.
movie. Yeah.
And that's a shame because like electronic music is such a huge part of gaming.
Yeah, it is. Also, it probably would never have been nominated, but I would have liked it to be nominated. The soundtrack for Kirby.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that game is a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
That game is fantastic. More people should go. Like Kirby has had a whole slew of weak games.
Yeah, this is
or like games that are probably, I don't want to say too easy, but kind of too easy.
It's not just that they're too easy. It's not. The problem is more.
They're not compelling.
Yeah, the main problem is that basically like Kirby peaked very early, both commercially in the sense that until Kirby of the Forgotten Land beat it this year, the most successful Kirby game was the first Kirby game by multiple millions of copies.
So, yeah, it peaked early, and then it also, like, it did innovate in each entry. Don't get me wrong. It's just that a lot of Kirby entries, especially games like Star Allies, felt like there just wasn't a lot of substance to them. And then to finally get this substantive, really amazingly well-made Kirby game was just such a joy.
It really was. But, like, it peaked... For a more broad thing, Dreamland peaked commercially, but the other two Sakurai games, Kirby's Adventure and Kirby Superstar, peaked creatively. And Kirby has always been innovative, especially in its side games or usually often more in its side games than its main games. But the problem is that basically some point after Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, all of the Kirby games became very quick and easy riffs on Kirby's Adventure and Kirby Superstar, which are great games on their own. And if, anyone listening has a Nintendo Switch Online subscription, fucking play them because they're really good. Kirby's Adventure is one of the best NES games ever made and one of the most accessible at that too. But my point being that all of the games, or not all of the games, but many of the ones since then, Kirby's Return to Dreamland, Kirby Triple Deluxe, Kirby Star Allies, I've heard all followed in on this. I think I've heard Planet Robobop deviates a little bit from it, but they all kind of had the same structure but less interesting. They all use the same they force you to use these super powerful moves that then completely alter the level, but not in really an interesting way. And sorry, I know I've been rambling.
No, that's fine. It's good to kind of keep track of where that series has gone, and it is nominated for I believe Best Family Game,
which is also kind of a bullshitty category, but one that's also kind of needed.
It really is.
Look, we need. This is an industry that puts way too much of its commercial and critical heft towards more mature games, and that's fine to a certain extent. It's fine, but it's really not good when the people are looking at the height of game movement and it's just all M-rated adventure games where you play as a sad dad. I know I'm being super reductive. I'm sorry, but yeah,
I mean, I think you're coming from an honest place on this as someone who is playing one of those sad dad action adventure games and enjoying it. You and I are not saying these are necessarily bad games. It's just that they're a small sliver of a very diverse and vibrant industry that I think should be celebrated in all its glory.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to say you can't have two games by the same company. There's a lot of companies that make a lot of games, and some of them are good. Certainly, I as a Nintendo fan, I liked having Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey up in one year. I'm not going to begrudge Sony fans for getting it this year.
But for Xbox, it's probably been, 10 years since it had a Game of the Year?
Yeah,
Did they ever get Halo? Was Halo Infinite nominated last year?
I thought it was.
Was it?
I don't remember.
Wait, no, it came out at the end of 2021, so it would have been eligible this year.
Yeah, I think in that case it just really was kind of crushed under the weight of everything else. I'm kind of surprised.
I didn't get any nominations as far as I can tell.
Okay, never mind. Actually, congrats, Horizon. You are not the bridesmaid of 2022 this year.
Yo, Halo Infinite is dope, though.
It's
so
fun as
much
shit.
fun. I had a great
Yeah,
time with it.
same.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite Halo game, but it's up there.
It does a lot more than you would expect from a Halo game, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually, now that you
Ah,
mentioned it, I'm actually kind of
We got
surprised.
a
We didn't get a single
legit
nomination.
snub now.
Yeah, like the actual snub. Huh? I didn't put that in my show notes. But yeah, Halo Infinite, big snub as far as I'm concerned. I could see it missing Game of the Year
Same.
given
Yeah,
Everything.
the controversy around support for
yeah,
the game and
multiplayer,
all
and
that.
long-season stuff,
But-
but the actual campaign, I mean,
Yeah, best action. I thought definitely shoe in for sure, right?
I would have thought so. I mean, I don't know. Shooter? Not even up for shooter? If it's not up for
I mean,
shooter.
there's no shooter category. It would be under
Oh,
action.
okay. Well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you know,
Like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which has received a lot of criticism for
everything.
its campaign and its, again, extremely controversial narrative. That's somehow nominated, so...
Oh yeah, like, and also I know it's more successful. I have to be cynical and assume that that's because it has Modern Warfare in the title, but like, Call of Duty took a really big shellacking last year, and as far as I can tell, Modern Warfare hasn't really, like, critically or in terms or as like a piece of art really rectified that. It's just sold better.
Yeah, I think what's
Yeah.
hurting people now is they were hoping for more multiplayer support, but I think they are leaning into Warzone 2.0, and I think that's what's going to split the community: is those who want to play classic COD multiplayer and those who want the Warzone experience. I think that's where a little bit of the angst is going to be.
Well, also the whole thing, like one of the big things about the entire Call of Duty controversy that's been bubbling, admittedly of just the past few years as opposed to the Call of Duty controversies that have been bubbling up forever, like the desire for there has been a very strong desire for them to just fucking stop doing annual releases,
Yeah.
which obviously is not borne out by the sales they get, but still, like, this was the whole point, like, that the games needed more time. They needed to have more time to respond to criticism and more time to respond to its own problems. They needed to not be at this absurd constant crunch for the many development studios that were essentially just forced into this giant, like, digital sweatshop. Like, it does feel weird having it on there, like, as if it was like, we're a little bit okay, and we're just going to ignore all that other stuff, and it's all fine now. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's a part of it that feels like Blizzard kind of deserves a little bit further of its shellacking.
Yeah, it's I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where everybody's COD is like what every gaming community right now. You're not going to make everybody happy, right?
Well, no, but
But what I think where you could is say, look, here's where our focus is this year. Legitimately, just tell people, hey, this year we want to get a great campaign out the door. It's going to be kind of iterative on the multiplayer side, but look, we want to nail this campaign. We want to give you the full-on action movie you've always deserved and wanted, right? Just let people know what you're going for each one, Instead of promising every single person the world, yeah, that's going to help sales. Don't get me wrong, get your business, but that's how you also kind of like drive customers crazy when it's like, wait, I thought this was the multiplayer one. The last one was the Warzone one. And now this one is the Warzone one too, on top of the multiplayer one.
I'll be honest, I'm very surprised at both Modern Warfare's, the extent, not that it's successful, but the extent of success it is, and the success of Overwatch 2. Like,
Yeah.
It's very weird to me that we all, as an entire video game industry culture, basically, were willing to at least sit down and just be like, yeah, no, Activision Blizzard King has fucking problems, and we're going to be honest about them, and we're going to be direct about them, and and we're not going to go away just because Microsoft decided to buy it. But it kind of feels weird. Like, I was reading an article about how, like, apparently there are like 30 million or 30 million people playing fucking Overwatch 2, which is a game that its entire reviews were, it's fine, it's Overwatch, but a little worse in every way. And if you basically bought Overwatch 1, you should be frustrated that you basically now no longer have Overwatch 1 thanks to
Yeah,
Overwatch 2.
You funded the
And it's
development.
nominated for best
there
multiplayer.
you
Yeah,
along with
best
Over
multiplayer.
Halo.
2.
Literally, the
But
first.
no one actually likes
Yeah.
it. Everyone's like, yeah, it's kind of fun, but it's not
I just
Overwatch
wonder how
1.
many of the people who would have been playing Overwatch 1 now are playing Overwatch 2 because they have to. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like, it's kind of a weird, you know?
Well, it's also, as a side note, bullshit when they were literally like, oh, by the way, people who played Overwatch 1 can join in. It's like, now it's, oh yeah, you can join in because we will destroy your copy.
It was like Warcraft 3 Reforged, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
It wasn't as overt, but it was fucking bad. Also, I do say anyone who wants to complain about the admittedly legitimate and sincere problems of the Pokemon technical issues, I just want to point to they had to remove 2 characters early on because they were unbalanced, even though 2 of them were probably the ones who had to be rebalanced the most. And then when they tried taking them off, another third of the Overwatch 2 cast was also taken out of the rotation. Accidentally.
Oh, May's still not back in as of this
she
recording.
might never
She
be
was
back in.
supposed to be back in, and then at the last second, they're like, nope, we still haven't fixed her.
I still found it hilarious. I think it was the Multiversus where it's like we were taking LeBron James out of the game.
Yeah.
And like just out of context, you're like, what the hell are they talking about?
No, because it's based off a real person, you think, wait, does he have some sort of scandal?
Yeah.
Like, what happened? Is he arrested for insider trading too?
Yeah, no. Check the news.
No, he's currently stuck in purgatory right now. Basically, that Lakers team is bad.
I do imagine that LeBron's moveset is probably one of those ones that has to be balanced a bunch. What
is his moveset?
Oh, he
Just,
dribbles.
dunking?
Like every attack involves him dribbling, but he also dribbles regularly when he's not attacking. The ball is like his main gimmick, and whether or not he has it in his possession dictates part of his moveset, basically.
Is it Michael Jordan, the Windy City? Are we speaking about that?
No, because for all of the problems Multiverses is not a bad game.
Fair enough.
I just want to make one point. Maybe this is me being mean, but whatever. I'm on a mean kick right now. Jeff, it's called Multiverses, not Multiverses. It's supposed to be read as one word. Like, that's literally the joke of the title.
I'm wondering where the Game Awards goes. Maybe like when it starts to feel like they want maybe the actual games that they're reviewing to be something that they don't necessarily have to like push onto people, that it's already been a success, and instead they start to kind of develop like rewarding games that deserve it no matter what, no matter how they sold, no matter how they were reviewed, stuff like that.
I feel like there's a way to do like smaller games, but the problem is that if you just call it the equivalent of like, this is the small game award of good games that you can play, like that's inherently kind of just belittling anyway. So like, it's hard, but it's also like we all kind of, I think, agree that they need to find ways to do that more and do it better.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it's supposed viewership. Watching a video game award show where that's why Call of Duty is going to be there every year, or why. And I was joking earlier about how, for all we know, Horizon and God of War are probably the same game, even though they're not. I mean, it's just it's like this big mess of same games like on the top, and I guess Xenoblade, and I guess a game about a cat.
Yeah, we'll give you can have your ultra niche JRPG as a treat.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Also for whatever it's worth, Jeff, and not the backpack on you guy who basically now is a lock on 3/4 of the world's gaming events. Biggest gaming events. But people are gonna watch anyway because all of us saw
the reveals.
Yeah, we all and I remember when we did both the live chat. Lovely Bones hosted a live show for the Avocado, and there was also a chat live show. For the 2021, I remember pretty distinctly. Sephiroth got announced for Smash like a half an hour in, and that was very exciting. And then the rest of the event was just complaining that none of the successive reveals were as good, or the nomination, or the victories as satisfying. And like,
I think it depends on what you're there for too. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe if you're there for like Vin Diesel, you'll always be happy until that weird art.
If you're there for the family.
Who isn't? I mean,
I mean, I am indeed one of the family.
Show yourselves.
Yeah, I do enjoy boring beer.
I do want to say something though about like the award selection. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that like this is 90% decide, like 10% is the viewer ballot. 90% is the games press ballot. And why we constantly end up with the biggest AAA games of the year getting honored is because there are a heck of a lot of indie games, and they split the vote. It would be impossible to expect that all of these little indies can get in to the bigger awards, and so just by construction, it ends up honoring the big AAA games that everybody played.
Yeah,
I don't think this necessarily like. You'd have to reconstruct the industry in order to really honor indies. Otherwise, what you're really asking for when you're asking for like a different slate of games to get honored is you're effectively asking people to play. I shouldn't say you. I mean like the world, all of us collectively. We're asking for the indie games we liked.
Yeah.
To be like, you guys should play the indie games we liked. That's what it boils down to. And like, I think everyone should play the indie games I like, but also I have to realize it's kind of unfair for people to just play things based on my tastes. And so I just wonder if there's a way that we can get more of these titles into the public eye, but like without kind of shaming people making the decisions they made.
I don't know. Maybe cut the fan voting part. Like, you already have the fan voted choice anyway.
Oh yeah, most anticipated game, which has been like Breath of the Wild 2 for the past 5 years.
I was under the impression that it wasn't just because you had to have an official title or whatever.
Oh no, one of the nominees one year was the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and I would vote on it.
It wasn't you had to have an official title, it just had to be officially announced.
Yeah.
That game we're sure will come out.
I mean, I
you
actually
just might as well start nominating now, right? God of War, the next one. That's my bet.
I mean, this has a release date now, so it's coming.
I've got a lot more. I don't know. I wish Jeff the best. I really do. I think the guy really cares, right?
No, he does.
I do.
If anything, his problem is he cares too much. Like, just like every bad bad resume.
I just think that around him, I think he's got some good people who are like, look, let's make sure that none of this stuff gets lost, and we, do a good job talking about all this stuff. And then he's got some people who are like, look, if you just shut up and play one more ad, we'll make more money, And so I wonder, I hope he can keep it where it is and keep honoring indie games and games that really are maybe trying to make a difference, even if they don't, but figure out a way to do it that feels like honest and organic, rather than just like you were saying, like, hey, here's a game that I liked and it was small, so go play it.
I do think he has come a long way from that infamous Doritos Mountain Dew photo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, he's got an angel and a devil, right? He's got, hey, talk about games that are gonna, sell the show, because that's what people do want. I mean, it sounds
right,
crazy, but yeah, I mean, people want to.
It's like people want to see Call of Duty. Like as much as I don't care about Call of Duty, like there are people who care way more than I. Exactly. It's like I want to. It's kind of the argument though, towards the 10 best picture nominees for the Oscars.
Right. How come Avengers isn't one of them? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
it made the most money. It's clearly the best movie ever.
Yeah.
I honestly think they could stand to expand from 6 to 10. Take the same tack the 100%. Oscars have taken.
Yeah.
They could easily accommodate 10 for Game of the Year. There are plenty of worthwhile titles. I think it would get more indies in that conversation. Yeah. And I think it just would better reflect the diversity of the games industry as a whole, because then you would get some more neglected genres kind of bubbling up to the top.
I think
You would see, I think, the
also
token
think
strategy
weirdly-
nominee every year or something like that.
Weirdly, it would open the the lanes for, hey, this was a really good version of NBA 2K this year. Let's get it in the Game of the Year awards.
Absolutely.
Because it was that good. I mean, we're just assuming that that's never going to be a Game of the Year type thing. But what if it was? What if it was, the MLB The Show was the best it's ever been? And there's a lot of people who love baseball games, and if it's good, it's a good game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, I would like to see a lot of those, maybe not games that people really, talk about or fall in love with, or just on that edge, kind of get in there. I think the only real snub I could think of that I would have loved to see, and I think I might be crazy here, is the Ninja Turtles remake.
I was actually, as someone
That got nominated for Best Multiplayer.
Yeah. as
That's a
someone
good
who-
one.
who doesn't like the Ninja Turtles as a franchise at all, I think I was very happy to see it get that award.
It's amount of
Oh, yeah,
love.
and also Best Action.
Yeah, the amount of love that went into that game, it just oozes. And I think I talked about it on here before, and it just does a really good job of doing what that game does well, and also feeling fresh. And I loved it. I mean, it's one of the few games I got through start to finish. I was like, wow, this game definitely should be talked about a little more. And then the other one, I mean, we were talking a little bit about strategy. I would put Total Warhammer 3 up there easily. I know the game's kind of morphed into what it originally started to be, but I love that game. And that's the kind of game I think that you miss when you're making it the best action game of the year award. You're missing stuff like Total Warhammer 3. Total War Warhammer 3, excuse me.
No, just call it Total,
Total
War.
Warhammer 3.
Come on.
But yeah.
I would not hear of that game unless there were there are some evangelists
Oh yeah, I'm
on
one
the
of them.
forum. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
I am
I
one of them.
would have never heard of that. I mean, obviously, I would have heard of the property, but all I would have heard is like,
Well, it was really well received.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like-
it's great reviews, and they love it. They patched the shit out of it. They just added what their grand campaign is called, is the Immortal Empires, where you can, slowly paint the map, whatever your civilization is. And I mean, they get down into those, the ways that they support those games. I really love that game.
I was gonna say, I was deeply amused and kind of fascinated by if you buy all of these games, you can throw it into this one giant sandbox and just.
That alone deserves some recognition, right? How many other games let you do that, right? Where if you bought Total Warhammer 1 and 2, you can just load every faction into Total Warhammer 3 and just keep playing, like with all the updated units and rosters. That's so cool,
I will say at least Total Warhammer 3 was nominated for Best Sim /
Sure,
Strategy.
but
So some
Yeah.
recognition, but yeah, it would be nice to see not just like it be relegated to that genre award, but also
yeah, I
get
would.
wider recognition.
What if they did this? What if they took every genre, and then every winner of that genre basically was thrown into a pool for Game of the Year?
I think that's a neat idea, but I think it also has a separate issue, which is that there are times where there are occasionally games that kind of like sneak by and get in. It Takes Two is one of them, Stray is one of them, and like I think there's an argument to be made that those don't easily fit into the genres that are typically used in the industry, and so like it's the weird like it like
But
sort
the
of
other end of it, is there has to be a strategy winner of the year award, right? I mean, like who are you going to give it to? It's basically only Total Warhammer's award, probably, right?
Well,
So they're getting that award.
I think Victoria 3 and Mario Rabbids have a good chance.
Okay. I shouldn't dismiss the other game, but I guess what I'm saying is like if you're really just throwing them out there, and this is the option, do you eliminate them or add them to the list of Game of the Year awards, right? So like,
I mean, but what about if there's a case where there is a game that is an exemplary, like representative of a genre that isn't necessarily like Game of the Year material, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if it's something that's amazing because it perfectly represents a genre while not necessarily perfectly being like an example of what I would consider ideal. Like in 2017, I thought Mario plus Rabbids was an excellent game.
Sure.
I loved its design, but like I definitely didn't think it needed to be on a list, on a game list that already had Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey and the Sexy Brutale and Nier Automata and Hollow Knight and What Remains of Edith Finch and Prey.
Yeah, it's tough to figure out exactly where you go with some of this stuff. I don't necessarily hate that there's genre awards, but it's tough when there's genre awards, but then the game of the year also appears to be a genre award.
I mean, and in the end, I think the bigger problem is simply like kind of outside of Keeley's own ability to control, which is that we like as many genuine strides as the world of games journalism has taken, and I don't want to dismiss them because they are sincere, and I do think we're going to see them improve over time to even further. Like, we are still an industry that critically and by critically I don't mean like importantly, I mean in terms of actual games criticism, orbits very heavily and has always orbited very heavily around the idea of broad like action games as the default. Like, this is the idea is, in the past it was originally like Mario, and then it was Mega Man, and then it was Solid Snake, whatever. And like, yeah, all of these are very different, but ultimately this is a culture. We as a culture really do revolve around not just games with action or games with combat as the mainstream and as the default, but this particular type of combat and action.
Right, but
and that's why you end up with action adventure titles and RPGs kind of bubbling to the top. Action adventure titles representing the more, let's say, kinesthetic aspects of film, and then RPGs representing the more narrative aspects of film.
Like sometimes like there's always like Oscar bait movies, Oscar bait whatever. I kind of think that there can be that with some of these. It's almost like some of these action adventure games are the easy mode. Yeah. It's the default to tell a story, right?
Well, they are.
You're this guy. You're not another guy. You're not somebody else that made your guy. You're this guy, and you go from point A to point B, and we tell you a story as you go there. It's a good story. Don't get me wrong. It's a good story, but there's no choices. There's no Mass Effect spin to this. There's no RPG element. There's no create your own character. We're just basically going to get you from point A to point B as we tell the story we want to tell you. That's great, but that's not the only way video games tell stories, right?
But again, this is something that, in the same way of like, this is how we have to completely alter the games industry or games criticism. This would have to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because we would simply have to basically be like, okay, everyone, we can't look at this super realistic AAA Sony game as the default and around which we should orbit, with the possible exceptions of alternate flavors, one Nintendo game or one Square Enix game or one Ubisoft game.
Right.
That's the issue. Like, the issue is that so much of how we write about games and discuss games and think of games in the culture is so heavily based around this specific idea. And I don't really think you're going to get a year where people are going to, well, not to put too fine a point on it, or maybe to put you on a spotlight, Merve, but like, that's why we're not going to get a year where a visual novel is ever like nominated for Game of the Year, and I'm not sure if one ever has. It won't be more than a token one a year.
I think Walking Dead won once.
Right? Next year, mark my words, Master Detective Archives, Raincode, Game of the Year. You heard it here first, folks.
So we did find a couple snubs, at least. I was curious to see if we'd find any, but I think we did find a few. So
there's one more that I'm actually really, really surprised.
Vampire Survivors?
Vampire Survivors did get nominated, but I think only for Best Debut Indie. No, the one I'm surprised got 0 nominations for either Debut Indie or Games for Impact was Gibbon Beyond the Trees.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even like that game very much, but it's a like very explicitly environmentalist game. You'd think that would go, and it was quite prominent. You'd think that would get a nomination for Games for Impact. But I guess there's only one environmentalist.
Yeah,
game?
You can only have one. You got to pick. You got to pick your point.
You got to pick your social issue.
I'm kind of wondering if like there's a way to basically just be like super specific, but then the problem is if the award is too specific, then you either have a short you have a small pool, and that's not as fun.
Yeah.
This is actually just not to this is something that happens with the Peelies when I and then the people who help me, you, typically Lovely Bones, but also you as well, Merve, you helped me one year.
Yeah.
Is that basically like we want to have we use 5 nominees for a category at total instead of is that the way we do it is we have as many nominees as possible, but the top 5 or top 10 for worst film are the ones that get included. I feel very strongly that every category should have at least 5 possible nominations, if not more, because otherwise you look through the list and you see some lists are very full, and then some lists there's no competition, and it's just so frustrating because it's like you wanted that more love to come together, especially, and sometimes I've even like said like, please, I'm not, even if this category is something people really like, I might not nominate it, include it just because it doesn't have that amount.
Yeah, I think it's tough to figure out. Are we nominating just because there's a category, or is there a category because there's a lot of options out there and there needs to be one? You know?
It's a weird thing. I don't know.
I think they.
So are you trying to say there's like a category in the Game Awards you think just kind of generates nominations by its mere presence? I know it's going to be tempting to say the esports categories.
Yeah, the fucking esports category.
No, but like, I say this as someone with zero interest in esports. I have to recognize that it is an important part of this industry and this community, and like I guess it kind of has to be recognized, even if I have zero connection to it whatsoever. So I don't know to what extent it's kind of just generating its own nominations. Do people really follow this stuff? I mean, there's money in it. People probably are following this stuff. I just don't have any association with those people.
I mean, I think part of the thing is like that's important, and I do like the idea of like trying to bring in people within this industry, like who aren't just behind an actual games company. Like, I think that's cool. I also maybe think it would have been cool to have like some kind of, this might be more controversial and it could have its own problems, but maybe like a category for like good journalism in games.
I would love stuff like that. I mean, I really would.
Yeah.
But I think as it is, the way the esports stuff works really just feels like pointing out the fact that, yeah, this really is just a weird, like, corporate mishmash of shit where it's just like, that there's just so many fucking ads for everything, and that's okay. Some of them are good, and a lot of them are stinkers.
It's so weird that, especially in the esports awards, you have teams or athletes in completely different games, in completely different genres, competing against each other. Like, you have a Dota player competing against a high-level Call of Duty player. How does that make sense? They're not the same thing.
And it's usually just like, these guys won their championship, these guys won their championship.
I also can't deny that, like, it sometimes feels like the issue is that they seem to only be just kind of gravitating around the big ones, like the big recurring.
Your League of Legends,
And that's fine. Like, it makes sense. That's where a lot of the big players would gravitate. That's fine. But I kind of, maybe it would be cool to have, like, games that are more niche, like your Total Wars.
But it's like,
I will say one community that's extremely underrepresented in the esports category is the fighting game community. And the FGC is kind of its own thing. It's very separate from traditional esports, but there's like no representation. It's all, like, I'm looking right now. It's 2 CSGO athletes, 2 League of Legends athletes, and 1 Valorant
But
athlete.
I guess it'd be like this. Like, imagine, like, ESPN has a sports award called the ESPYs. Imagine if there was a category that's just like, okay, we're going to put the winner of the World Series, the winner of the Super Bowl, and the winner of the NBA championship, and the winner of the Stanley Cup against each other. Who's the best team? Like,
isn't that just like, wasn't that already an NBC show in the 80s?
like the like Battle of the Best or something like that?
Yeah,
I can't
or
remember
the
what it was
World
called.
Games Atari game.
Yeah. But I mean, like, at some point, it's like, how do I judge who's the better team? Like, I don't know how those categories even work. And then let's just talk about one category that I'm not even sure why it exists at this point, and that's best VR/AR. Like, they had to have thought this was going to be a bigger thing, and just don't have the guts to get rid of this
Jeff,
category, right?
Jeff,
Like,
you can retire categories. The Academy does it all the time. Controversially, yes, but not always but they don't have to be that controversial.
like when I look at what's listed, I mean, I'm not saying I got my ear to the ground of VR games, but there's very few where I'm like, okay, so there's Among Us, right? And then a bunch of games I haven't heard of. It's just weird.
I've heard of Boss Book
Really?
too. I haven't heard of the others though.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird category, and I mean, I think we've always thought that VR would grow, and so maybe it made sense to give them a category that eventually would be full of these beautiful Oculus Rift powered, games. But I mean, if they had any balls, they'd put the metaverse out there. Like, for the best game, yeah. Zuckerberg on the Eiffel Tower.
Second Life.
Yeah,
Coming again.
yeah, but you can.
Okay, I gotta stand up for this category because last year it was the only category that Hitman 3 got nominated in.
That is bullshit, by the way. That game is great.
That game is fantastic. It was
And it was probably
snubbed
just
up the
their VR
wazoo
port,
last
right?
year.
I mean,
Yeah, it's just the VR, like, the VR port's just like a small part of it or
Yeah.
something like that.
That's hilarious. But I don't know. I mean, am I wrong, or are these kind of whatever games, right? Like,
it's
no impact
I mean,
outside of their extremely small.
I mean, I think of it, it's almost like analogous to sports
Yeah.
games, right? That they are their own niche, and that niche is worthwhile, but it is a niche. So, and it's a niche that I happen to be mostly outside of. I have one friend who is huge into VR, so every time I'm over at his place, it's like, we're putting on the Oculus headset. and then-
Thanks for the headset.
we're
Thanks for the
playing.
headache, buddy.
Yeah, I wear glasses.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
a huge
I
pain.
wear glasses and have sometimes some get nausea from certain movements. So yeah,
I can't even play old 90s FPSs sometimes.
Oh.
I don't think VR is going to be good for me either.
oh my god, I have a story actually about that. I played Doom for the first time a few years ago for we have a column on the Avocado for late to the party for playing something that, like, experiencing something for the first time but like years after it's
Yeah.
come out. I chose Doom. I played it, loved it, wrote up a review. Literally the day I published the Avocado, I had never had any motion sickness with the game at all. It all ran smoothly for me. The day I published it, I went to play a little bit casually, and I got sick 30 seconds in.
Man.
Oh no.
I wonder what it is, but yeah, I VR is one of those things where it's just either it clicks with you or it doesn't. It gives me headaches. I mean, like, I've tried it; it is not for me. But yeah, I don't know.
I enjoy it. I just don't want to sell like $800
But
for
just
it.
speaking of,
However much it costs in Canadian dollar
Speaking
reviews.
of a category that just feels like they're just nominating literally anything that comes out, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, Among Us VR, maybe it does cool things, I don't know, but I feel like Among Us was a pretty good game anyway. Same with the Hitman 3.
Do you get to be one of the Among Uses?
Probably.
Is
I
that-
bet you what it is, all the little tasks are like, VR fumblecore type stuff, plug in the whatever as you're messing around in VR.
It's like Job Simulator.
Yeah, exactly.
but-
It's so weird that those are the games that really caught on VR stuff. Is like, wow, isn't it hard to do this stuff in VR? Or like, there's that game where like you're like a gladiator, and you just kind of swing around the room, or whatever. Like everything falls over. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could definitely lose that category. But a lot of the content creator stuff is all. I mean, it's not for me. I watch a lot of Twitch, but I even recognize that stuff's not for me. I either watch really big or really small content creators.
I find it very ironic that Nibelian is nominated for Content Creator of the Year, and the nominations came out like a little bit after they announced that they were no longer that they were leaving content creation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's effectively. I don't think they're dead, but it's effectively going to be a posthumous award if they win.
It's a weird, but whatever. We don't even have really a in remembrance of or
Yeah.
remembering the lost
In
game of
memoriam,
developers
yeah.
we lost
That's
this
true.
Well-
Is there like a lifetime achievement thing? Have I been missing that, or is it doing that like off
I kind
stream?
of wonder if they feel like they're too young to do it. I personally think it would be good.
Didn't like one of like the original Atari inventors win something once? Maybe I'm wrong. It was something different.
Maybe that happened. I kind of remember that happening the day I went to the 2017 New York Game Awards.
It might have been about that long ago,
but yeah, maybe I'm just forgetting if it's that versus the Game Awards. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't mind a lifetime achievement thing. I think that'd be kind of cool. You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who deserve it.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? Yeah, whatever. Sid Meier's probably never gonna get a major game anymore. I actually don't know anything about Sid Meier, so I might be talking about someone who's terrible. So apologies.
He seems like the kind of guy who seems pretty quiet. Even when he was putting his name on games, I hardly ever heard about him. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't think he has. I mean, I don't know very much at all, but I don't think he has a ton of insight with the current development of Civ games.
Oh yeah, no, I doubt.
He also never threatened to make me his B like other.
And it's funny how John Romero like kind of became a chill dude after.
Yeah,
a while.
I know, right?
Like we look.
You know who else did Cliffy B? Look
Much-
at him now. He's like producing Broadway plays.
The ooh yeah, so much for the creator of Jazz Jackrabbit. Yeah, but yeah, what would also be cool is if you could also do with people who aren't necessarily developers, like composers.
Yeah, sure.
Like, let's put fucking Tezuka Tataka on there.
Yeah, I mean, I all of them. I mean, there's plenty of people who have done a lot of cool stuff, and I think, have them up there, give them an award. I think they deserve it more than like maybe like whoever's the hot content creator of the month who got their audience to go spam whatever,
Side note,
Most efficient code.
Yeah.
How about that?
A side note, I got the man's name wrong. Sorry, it's Kazumi Tataka. I mistook him with Takashi Tezuka.
There are a lot of people in the games industry. It's
yeah,
okay.
but that's one who matters to me because he made music that I like in a game that I like, and by extension, it means he deserves to win more than other people.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everyone should vote for whomever I want to win. That's how the world should work.
With your hero becoming Marty McDonald.
That's why last year. That's why this year Elden Ring is going to win, and why last year inexplicably New Pokemon Snap won.
Oh. Of course.
This is gonna be Neon Whites here to come out on top. You guys wait and see.
Masayoshi Soken, FF14's composer.
Oh.
No,
I mean, no. Seriously though, that you were talking earlier about how all the Lord of the Rings soundtrack is very bombastic and fair. It's their 14 soundtrack is just gonzo sometimes. It's just like very, like just.
What's one that gets stuck in my head all the time, and I don't even know what it is. It was like when you would, it was like the log into like the old store for Final Fantasy 14. It was like the Moogle shop or something.
Okay.
It had like its own theme. I love that theme. I wish you could like get that as like a ringtone or something. But that was a really cool one.
But yeah, the soundtracks, especially for the Raid series, are just a mixture of just lots of rock, just lots of just weird, just goofy, loud. It's someone described it as proggy early, like once, but yeah, like that's a series where they're just jumping back and forth between genre and like every single Raid thing. There was I'm trying to describe how there's just lots of
because like my personal one is Michael Salvatore from Destiny, of course, because every season he has to come up with a new theme, right? Like this year they did pirate stuff, so he did like like Pirates of the Caribbean sounding stuff. The one before it was kind of like a galactic horror Lovecraftian thing, so he had themes for that. And I think sometimes when you get a good composer who can work with the theme of the whatever they're doing that year, I think that's really tough, because you're writing to the game, not to what you want to just
it's
play.
Definitely themes. I mean, for example, Endwalker right now is basically it's Final Fantasy IV the expansion.
Yeah.
Because they're on the moon and the main character is a paladin in all the videos.
Wait, Final Fantasy IV takes place on the moon?
Merve. Oh man.
No, That is the final dungeon area. Is the moon.
Yeah, and they don't even like I think by the time you get there, is that the one with the twins?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of weirdness going on in that story.
Four is kind of.
You guys play too many video
Four
games.
is kind of Star Wars in a way. Like it's just a lot of just. It's
like a really condensed, like small story, and then it just goes nuts. Like it's just like, oh yeah. Also, there's this ship that can go to the moon. You should go get it.
Yeah, it's the shape of a giant whale.
Whale.
Which I bought the mount for 14 with real American money. It was I'm very sad. it can seat 8 people too, like this just giant mount.
Yeah. What was I don't even remember. Was it Crystal Chronicles? Is that 4?
No, Crystal Chronicles is a spin-off.
That's a
Yeah,
sad thing.
that was like GameCube, yeah. But no, this
It was 4-player.
But yeah, the soundtrack has a lot of covers of Final Fantasy IV music, for instance, and really, the battle theme, and just it's done all extremely well. Just not just the single bombastic orchestral thing, but just lots of genres, just either very soft or very loud. That game has a very eclectic soundtrack, and I think that's part of the appeal, quite honestly, is that it's not just.
Who's up for sound this year? Are they up for any? Final Fantasy 14?
I don't think so.
Huh.
They're not up for score and music, and for audio design, no, that's
Basically everyone from
Elden Ring, Call of Duty, Ragnarok, Gran Turismo 7,
PS4 is
and
basically
Horizon Forbidden West.
just literally the Game of the Year nominees, except for Metal Hellsinger instead of Horizon.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 14 is only in Best Ongoing,
That's
which makes sense. It might even win it this year because Genshin's had controversy. Fortnite's stars kind of faded. Destiny 2 might get it. Who knows? Apex again. Pretty old.
It's in a really good place, and I'm not saying that just because I play it, but because it's just in a really good place. It's becoming more and more friendly to folks who just want to play single player. I believe the next patch is going to allow you to do all of the required dungeons through Heavensward, the first expansion, with AI partners.
Okay,
like
that way I don't have to pay for a tank.
You don't even have to talk to other people. It's wonderful.
I mean, no.
I always mess with it because I quit a long time ago, and that was my last experience with the game. Was there's so few tanks, you literally had to bribe them to go do stuff with you. Like if you found another player who was online, you'd be like, "Hey man, I need to do this thing for my class quest. I'll give you gold to go play this game with me." They fixed a lot of it.
Yeah, it's not remotely that. Yeah, it's. I think jumping back into that. Not that I'm asking you to, obviously, but if
I'm all Latro now, you better watch out.
Yeah. Oh, I know. But the sheer changes that game has faced in the last couple of years are pretty nuts. And but they just continue to add content there. They continue to make it easy there. Again, the free trial alone, it takes away like market board access, and you can't join a free company, I believe.
Yeah, but probably don't want gold farmers to.
Oh, that's exactly the reason, actually, because gold botting is kind of a problem in that game. It's like, I mean, not super noticeable. Like the one place that I know where the gold botting is ridiculous is like secondary content that is not required, and most people aren't going to go to it anyway.
Yeah, that's normal.
I mean, they're all hanging out in the Eureka, which is optional content, not for everyone, and you might be guaranteed to hate it because it's designed like you're back in Final Fantasy XI.
Oof. Yeah.
Where it's you will.
Wait, do people not like 11?
No. So.
Well, 11. I mean, 11 is respected now. I mean, it's in many ways. Granted, I've never played it, but
it's the kind of precursor because they were both online.
Yep.
Well, here's my thing with 11. That was weird. They released it. Remember, I love MMO, so I was going to give this a shot, right? They released it in Japan, I think, like maybe almost a year and a half before they released it in America, and they combined the servers, right? So in an MMO, it's really weird to jump into a server where half the population is like light years ahead of you, right? And the game had the most complicated combat system in the world. I used to post this, like, I'll send it to you for the link dump, but there's this incredibly elaborate chart of like what moves do what after what moves and stuff, and like you have to coordinate this, right? But half your team doesn't speak English, right? So you can't like really communicate to them. You have to learn what class does what opener does what, all this weird stuff, and like it really developed into like weirdly like Japanese people wouldn't group with the North Americans wouldn't group with the Japanese people because you just couldn't get stuff done because of the limitations of the game design. And it was really just like a tale of two games. Really weird design decisions there. I think they eventually opened up a bunch of like NA only servers and stuff like that, but
there's a lot of room these days where that never happens there. And there's also a really cool auto translate feature where it's just like lots and lots of basically choose from hundreds upon hundreds of possible things to fill out, where you can like have like an actual, like not have like an actual conversation, but you can point like, I want this thing. And it's just a lot easier now than it used to be. But I know like I think one of the producers of 11, like they still occasionally do some of like the secondary content for 14. The Boja was the most recent content they did, where it's basically it has some teeth to it, as in you will lose levels if you die, etc.
Yeah, I like punishment in MMOs for dying. That's always been one of my favorite things. Like you should feel it. Corpse runs were always my favorite. EverQuest, you could always lose your body. You had to go pay a necromancer, give him a tiny coffin so he could summon your body. So that was hilarious.
But yeah, no. I kind of go back to it there. Yes.
And satanic.
So I just linked the
So
skill
you made a
tree, so
good-
you can check that out, Merve, and see what you think about how it flows in through impaction or distortion or compression or transfixion. Just what kind of moves are you trying to do there?
But I will say though,
Impaction, man, you're gonna piss off your proctologist.
I will say though, that game, from what I've gathered, is almost completely soloable now.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they probably had to make it that way. Because I mean, it was when I was playing it.
Because you need people to be able to catch up, right? Otherwise, how do you get new players into the ecosystem?
Yeah, because you get to a point where everybody's already either done that or quit, and it's a real hard treadmill for MMOs to keep up when it's just like, well, I want to play this game, but I can't find people who are doing what I'm doing,
And right now, even through the free trial, there is a lot of content you can play by yourself. So
You're talking
they
about
are
14.
Yeah, 14.
Oh yeah. 14 is. I think it's pretty much the master class of how to fix your MMO right now. But 11.
Yeah, so you've made a very good case for why it should win Best Ongoing Game at the Game Awards.
I mean, if I was going to say one thing about the Game Awards, I was probably going to be that. Where you be like, oh yeah, the game that I will not stop talking about.
I'm fine with Destiny winning. I think it's like for like community, something like that. They got
Best Community Support.
I think they've got good community managers, but the game right now is kind of in a spot as usual.
So the fun thing is that 4 of the nominees from Best Ongoing are also under Best Community. In fact, I thought that I just looked in right now. I thought I'd misclicked and clicked on the wrong category.
That makes sense.
The one that's different is No Man's Sky's under Best Community Support, but not under Best Ongoing.
I guess, well, it's not really, it's sort of a multiplayer-y, like, I think that's probably, I guess, fair. Honestly, you know what, whatever. I actually like when the awards aren't always the same.
What a weird story for a game, though, huh? I mean, just the tale of No Man's Sky is one for the ages, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much
For
everybody
being
calls
reviled
it. There's
for being beloved.
Hey, there's no way this can happen. You can't do this, right? And then they didn't. And everybody's like, we told you couldn't do this. And now they're like, fine, we're going to go back and do this, even though they really didn't even have to, you know? They could have.
Oh, Sean Murray could have taken the money and run.
Yeah. Good on him, man. I mean, I still think the game is, you know, at least from what I played, and I played it well after it was fixed. I still don't find it a lot of fun, you know. I have mixed results with those survival kind of crafty games, but at least he put the effort in. Good for him.
Yeah, great community support. Anything else you wanted to mention about the Game Awards?
I think I'm good.
All right. I hear.
Yeah, I have nothing.
Sorry, you were saying something? No, you're not saying anything. That's okay. We've talked a lot about the Game Awards. A lot of free publicity for Jeff.
Yeah, I know.
My fellow Canuck. So, if you'd like to keep up to date with the podcast, you can follow us on our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com. And on that website, every episode goes up there. We also post a link dump that has links to a lot of the stuff we talked about, some fact checks for things that we said that were not true. I say a lot of things that aren't true. I'm very bad with the truth. I might be lying right now. There's no way you would know. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Just search for Avocado Gamescast. And we've been talking a lot about the Avocado, which is the community that spawned this podcast. If you'd like to check out a wonderful independent pop culture site that covers movies, games, TV, music, and a whole bunch of other stuff, you can check them out at the-avocado.org. Don't type out the word hyphen, just put a little bit of that hypheny goodness between the E and the A, and it'll take you right there. All right.
It was a good one.
This was
yeah,
a good
I
one.
thought I didn't have anything to say about the Games Awards. We sure ended up having something.
We sure had a lot to say about the Game Awards. And we made it to the end of this podcast without any of us being arrested for insider trading. So we're having a better day than Yuji Naka.
I was reading that Reset Era thread, and Yuji Naka, he sounds like a good person.
Man, that fucking guy.
Yeah, he
Oh, the best joke in that thread, and I'm quoting a user named Jiggles Bunny. Reports are saying that he tried to fight off the police, but his arms wouldn't swing. He just kept jumping and swapping outfits.
Let's just the guy. I'm not going to do this into a quick thing. This was a guy who literally repeatedly sabotaged his own company, so that other studios wouldn't get to make Sonic games.
He actively erased someone from a photo.
Yes. Oh my God. I got to. Yeah. That was amazing.
Oh man, Sonic Wash. It came back around, Merve. See, that's what happens.
We did.
No.
We had 3 parts of Sonic Watch this time.
We're over 3 hours into recording. We have to stop soon.
Yes, we need to stop.
I have not had dinner other than like 3 sips of a cold chicken corn chowder.
All right, let's close it out, guys.
Yeah, you live in my time zone. You should go eat food.
Go eat.
All right. We're going to call this to a close. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you all for our year-end episode, which is coming up right after this. Well, not right after this. It's going to come up a few weeks after you listen to this. If you even listen to this, why do you listen to this podcast? Anyway, good night, folks. See y'all later.
Yep.